drop it. Power panel. Cenk, Uygur, John Iadarola. Bridget Todd's back with us. She's with UltraViolet. That is a national organization for feminist, cultural, and political change. Yes, we need that. So, Bridget, great to have you back.
I'm so excited to be here. Great way to start my weekend.
All right, excellent. John, it's also good to have you. Okay.
It's almost Saturday. I don't even care anymore.
Yeah. All right. So listen, guys. Serious show, fun show. Human-animal hybrids are coming. Fox is concerned. Women are not having enough babies. Fox is concerned. These clowns.
So what if they'd have babies, but they'd be half pig? Wedge issue.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one to decide. So, but we have very serious issues too. Although, look, their cultural war against women is very serious. But we also have a totally nonsense so-called bipartisan compromise on infrastructure. We're going to break down how ridiculous it is. So stay right here for all the news.
Why are you against a realistic approach to infrastructure?
Oh, yeah, realistic approach. By the way,
Cinema just wants to be realistic.
Yeah, where your taxes go up and corporate taxes stay down, where you get no climate change legislation at all. And I can go on, and I will, but that's later in the show.
You will, okay.
All right, take it away, John.
Well, let's go on about this before we go on about that. A new report by Amnesty International seems to show that Joe Biden's promise to restore the soul of the nation is avoiding the soul part near the border, because some of what's going on down at the southern border is pretty similar in effect to what Donald Trump was up to. They put out this report titled Pushed into Harm's Way. It was released earlier today, and it documents the Biden administration's effective continuation of its predecessor's policy of rejecting nearly all asylum seekers at official ports of entry along the US-Mexico border. So look, if you've been following us for the past few months, you know that we have been checking in both legislatively with what they're talking about potentially doing in terms of immigration reform, as well as what they have done and haven't done via executive orders and that sort of thing. So there have been some changes that have been positive that we've given the Biden administration credit for in the past, but some of what they're doing deserves a much closer look, and thankfully Amnesty International is doing that. They say that the new administration is misusing a provision of anti-trafficking legislation concerning Mexican unaccompanied children to deprive them of effective screenings for harm and to deny them access to asylum procedures. And so basically, it's a regulation that certainly has its place to avoid the possibility that kids are being trafficked across international lines, on international borders and that sort of thing. But that's not what is being done in practice. It's just being used as an excuse to bar their entry. There are requirements under the TVPRA, that's the regulation that we're talking about. In that, Customs and Border Protection officials are often not performing child protection screenings faithfully, appropriately, or with reasonable informed consent of the children, who often do not understand what is happening during the process. And thus far, and we'll get to some of the administration statements about this, this has been going on for months. It's resulting in a very large percentage of kids being rejected at the border with no consideration to their possible need for asylum. And that has just been going on. And Biden thus far doesn't seem to have much of a problem with it. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so look, this is the problem with corporate media, because when corporate Democrats are in charge, and in the old days when there were corporate Republicans in charge, that hasn't happened in a while. Trump is a weird hybrid, part human, part corporate. Mitch McConnell's purely corporate. Anyway, so when corporate Democrats are in charge, the press totally shuts down. So here's a story from The Intercept initially, then covered by Common Dreams. These are independent, progressive news organizations that are bringing you the reality of what's happening, and an Amnesty International report. There's no question that it's happening, right? But the rest of when Trump turns away kids at the border, oh my God, terrible. Now that's true, that is true. I'm glad they did that. That was good journalism, right? Now when Biden does the same, But it's actually worse than that. What is the main criticism Kamala Harris faced when she did her "Do Not Come" speech? And by the way, it turns out it doesn't matter if you come, because we'll turn you away anyway, just like Trump did. And the press's main criticism was that she did not do a photo op at the border that the Republicans demanded. That's a right-wing criticism. That's not a legitimate criticism. So the press has been horrible on this, if you ask me. Bridget, what do you think?
I agree. I think it's important to remember that it doesn't matter if there's a Republican or a Democrat in the White House, that we need to have a humane immigration system. People have a right to seek amnesty, and turning away unaccompanied children is a violation of that right. And we should be trying to build a more humane immigration system that really honors that. I think that's what people voted for. People voted for a system that was going to be more humane. I think that you're exactly right that under Trump, some of the horrible things that happened in terms of immigration was covered quite a bit. I would like to see people continue to be outraged, even if there's a Democrat behind those policies.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit more about the kids, about how this process works, how many it might be affecting. So as of right now, in recent history, about 1 in every 3 migrants and asylum seekers from Central America and Mexico is a child, and half of them are unaccompanied by family members or other adults. And so apparently something like 80% of those kids have family members waiting to receive them in the US. Okay, so many of them, the vast majority, have family members potentially that can care for them in the US. Something like half of them are effectively unaccompanied by anyone in their family, anyone they truly know when they hit the border. So when they're turned away, and most of them are, according to this is a report in the Intercept, unaccompanied Mexican children were therefore returned to Mexico in approximately 95% of cases after being apprehended by US Border Patrol. So then what happens to the 50% of the kids who aren't there with family members? I honestly don't know. Does anyone know? Are we just hoping that the people who had accompanied them the last portion of the way to the border are looking out for them? They're gonna care for them? Is anyone checking in on the kids afterward? I feel fairly certain CBP isn't. And as we saw, something like 80% of those kids have family members here who in theory could care for them. Even if you were assuming that at some point they may be deported back to their country of origin rather than just being turned away at the border, that seems like a far more humane situation for those children.
Yeah. So John,
definitely.
Yeah, so there's 2 different things here, policy and politics, right? So in terms of the policy, Biden still has the Trump policy of if you come as a family, we're gonna reject you carte blanche. So that's why some of the families are actually coming up with the kids, and then the last couple of miles the kids are doing on their own because they know if they come as a family, they'll be rejected. That's also inhumane. We actually have laws in this country, and we are supposed to apply them, and I think they're good laws. Now, Republicans could argue against them, and that's a separate conversation, and that's a policy conversation. And I believe in democracy, and if they win, right? But the laws that we currently have is that if you're coming in as an asylum seeker, well, you go through a process, right? And by the way, a lot of those folks are rejected. So some of them are in imminent danger and they are accepted. And a lot of them, even if they're in a lot of danger but not imminent danger, are sent back, okay? And by the way, you could be against that from the left and say that's way too harsh, right? But Biden's not even getting to that point. He's saying if you're coming as a family, no way, right? And if you're come as a family and then send your kids at the end, well, we'll pretend we're taking them in, but we won't take in most of them. And don't worry, now corporate media is behind me, so they won't question me on that at all. And we'll just do it in the dark of night and get away with it, right? Yeah. Now the politics of it. Now, did it help assuage Republicans at all?
Are they happy?
Yeah, do they look like they're like, oh, okay, Biden is being almost as draconian as Trump. Yay, Biden, okay, that's right, we're all turning around. Turns out Biden's so moderate, he doesn't want these immigrants in the country any more than we do. It turns out he was lying about being humane about them. Yes, we love that he's inhumane. No, it hasn't earned him a single vote. So, and by the way, one more thing about politics. Republicans have this conspiracy theory that Democrats are bringing in all these immigrants. Tucker Carlson is the biggest advocate of this. Bringing in all these immigrants so they could vote for Democrats. Then why is Biden rejecting all of them? And the very few, and the very few he lets in are minors who can't vote. Well, then why doesn't he let the families in who presumably eventually could vote? right? If your theory is that's the Democratic plan, why are they doing the opposite of the Democratic plan in a Democratic administration that you said you were positive was letting these immigrants in so they could vote for people like Biden?
Well, duh, you let the kids in now so that someday they'll be able to vote for President Hunter Biden. Obviously.
I mean, that's such a good point. I guess I feel that it does seem like Biden is kind of trying to capitulate to Republicans. And what difference does it make? They're never going to be on his side. He may as well go big when it comes to immigration and have a humane system that really works for more people instead of just trying to play it safe, because it's not really getting us anywhere.
Yeah. Well, I understand it's probably a little bit early for the first break, but this next block, when we get into Manchin and some of his corporate donors, and then the debate over whether democracy is in danger is gonna be a big one. So I think we should probably take our first break, and then we're gonna dive into something massive after this.
All right, I want to tell you about two things that are happening on June 18th. Number one, it's going to be our final call for Twitch pitch applicants. So these are folks that we're looking to potentially give a show on Twitch to that are not part of our regular hosts right now. We want to give everybody an opportunity. We believe in that in TYT. So it's tyt.com/Twitch pitch, and it's going to get closed on June 18th, and then we're going to announce during the show on June 21st who the semi-finalists are. So all you got to do is, well, you go to that URL, tyt.com/Twitch pitch, and it'll show you what you got to do. Quick video, that'll do it. And by the way, I've seen some of the videos, they're hilarious. So keep them coming. Great, wonderful, okay? We believe in you guys. And so, I mean, what other show says, hey, we'd like to take the audience and make them hosts? And other folks that work here also came from the audience. All right, now, another thing on the 18th is Juneteenth. It's gonna be our third annual Juneteenth special. So the first hour is hosted by Ben Dixon. Second hour is hosted by J.R. Jackson. Joining them are Bridget Todd, who's on the show today, as you know, Kenya Evelyn, Joa B. Asamoah, Dr. James Simmons, Dr. Rashad Ritchie, Jason Carter, Charles Coleman, Wazni Lambre, and Wisdom Cole. And we're gonna talk about reparations, diversity in politics, representation, voter outreach, and much more. That's at, as you can tell on the screen, 8 o'clock Eastern on June 18th. So make sure you're checking that, that's gonna be amazing. By the way, on June 18th, all the profits from shoptyt.com are gonna go to the NAACP, okay? And so please check that out when you get a chance. Now, I'm gonna do YouTube super chat. Sean Umpleby writes in, Bridget. That's it.
I'll take it.
Yes, but he also writes right back in on super chat, says, Bridget, your video cut out on TDR when you answered my question. I still don't know your dragon name. Thank you, TYT family, great coverage. So I don't know, do we have a dragon name yet, Bridget, or no?
It was Gender Justice Dragon.
Oh, Gender Justice Dragon. Okay, I like it. You know, UltraViolet Dragon could have worked too, now that I think about it. But okay, God bless. Speaking of which, tell me what to put put in 1,234 bits and gifted a sub on Twitch, because that's what that's what they do every day. So thank you. Holy Beer Dragon gifted 10 subs. Thank you. We'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, John, and Bridget with you guys. John's got more news for us.
I do indeed. Joe Manchin has really been asking for it this year, effectively saying, Joe Biden's not president, I'm president. I'll decide what you get to do, and more importantly, what you don't, which is basically everything. And despite this, he hasn't really faced that much public criticism. It started a little bit this week. You had representatives like Jamal Bowman and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez pointing out the obvious influence that his corporate donors and his desire for donations has had on him. People have cited his past statements about the filibuster, where he seemed much more open to reform. Well, now people have been doing more digging and surfacing more information about the groups that have recently been trying to pressure him, as well as those who've been providing donations. So we're gonna run through several of those, including Americans for Prosperity, a group backed by billionaire Republican donor Charles Koch, not generally thought of as a big supporter of the Democratic Party, but he's explicitly targeted Manchin in its pressure campaign, the Americans for Prosperity, to defeat the legislation. This is the For the People Act, even though their own data shows that provisions cracking down on dark money are highly popular, including among Republican voters. You can find online messages back and forth between them, recorded conversations where they talk about how difficult it is to craft a narrative that would get Republicans to oppose many of the provisions of the For the People Act. That did not cause them to do a bit of soul searching about why conservatives are so supportive of it. They're just going to try to get it killed without ever actually convincing people that it needs to be. You also have Heritage Action. This is the advocacy arm of the Koch-backed Heritage Foundation, which organized a rally earlier this year to pressure Manchin to oppose the bill. Heritage Action has also partnered with the American Legislative Exchange Council to craft model voting restriction laws for Republican state legislators. And so I believe we have a Heritage Action organizer on video. This was obtained by Mother Jones, talking about one of these recent sorts of bills in Georgia.
Iowa was the first state that we got to work in, and we did it quickly and we did it quietly. Honestly, nobody noticed. At the end of the day, the bill that Governor Kemp signed and the Georgia legislature marshaled through had 8 key provisions that Heritage recommended. We're working with these state legislators to make sure they have all of the information they need to draft the bills. In some cases, we actually draft them for them, or we have a sentinel on our behalf give them the model legislation. So it has that grassroots, from the bottom up type of vibe.
Yeah, that's what we need in America, is we need a grassroots vibe, not grassroots action. We need vibe. We need some billionaires to hand legislation for Republicans to just sign off on. And that's apparently what they've been doing. And nobody even noticed.
Yeah, so there's so many parts of this that I love and hate. So that video couldn't have been any better. Sometimes the Sentinel will hand it to them just because we weren't creepy enough. And it'll seem grassrootsy. Or like, look guys, you get what John is saying, obviously, right? So they have no grassroots. These are giant corporate machines, and they fund these think tanks and these organizations. They then funnel the bribes, campaign contributions to the politicians like Joe Manchin. And they call that the under the dome strategy, meaning we have lost any chance of winning in a democracy, so we have to go to under the dome of the Capitol, where we rule, where we have all of our corrupt senators, both Republicans and Democrats, to work for us, so we don't need the grassroots. Now, that's obvious. Pause to think about, wait, if the overwhelming majority of Republicans also want some of these bills, including $15 minimum wage, which huge majorities in West Virginia in particular won. By the way, a majority of the people in West Virginia, which went heavily for Trump, also want to get rid of the filibuster. Interesting. And 79% want the For the People Act that would actually clean up our democracy and our elections. Now, it's not surprising, actually. Republicans also want to clean up the elections because a lot of them genuinely think that there was something wrong in 2020, right? So they go, oh, well, this bill addresses anything that might go wrong, and it gets more people to vote. And Republican voters think that there's more on their side, so they're like, what's wrong with more people voting? Let's do it, right? But most importantly, it has anti-corruption measures, and Republican voters love anti-corruption measures, and so do Democratic voters. Well, so the interesting note here is, but none of the Republican politicians want what an overwhelming majority of what Republican voters want.
Yeah.
And then now we turn to Manchin, he's a Democrat. And they say, oh, Joe Manchin, he's got to vote against all these popular provisions because of West Virginia. But wait a minute, that 79% number is from West Virginia. He's voting as 4 out of 5 voters in West Virginia. Why is he doing that? Well, this report shows he's doing it because he's corrupt. It's not at all complicated, and it is not at all a hyperbole. After you voted against $15 minimum wage, both Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, after she did the swirling vote no and the curtsy and stuff, and he said, oh no, yeah, I had higher wages. That's terrible, terrible for my corporate friends. I'm worried about my constituents. No, your constituents want it, definitely, overwhelmingly, right? You know what he did? They both curtsied over to the National Restaurant Association and collected their bribes. Now, they're legalized bribes in America, but they're definitely bribes. They just handed them checks. Good job, little boy, Manchin. Okay, Manchin's tough guy, pushing all progressives around, all Democrats around. He's pushing Joe Biden around. He's open-handed slap, boy. What are you gonna do about it, right? But when he goes to the National Restaurant Association, he's a dog. He's a servant. He's like, I'm here. Where's my check? And then they did. They gave him a check. They gave him lots and lots of checks. So it turned out great for Joe Manchin. That's why the under the dome strategy works, because our politicians are corrupt. Now the idiots in the mainstream media are like, what corporations? I don't know what you're talking about. Corporate donations. And so now, by the way, so this particular story is, he says, the Koch brothers Heritage Foundation has said our first starts spending money against them in West Virginia. Now remember, corporate Democrats and corporate media says Joe Manchin cannot be pressured. He's a rock, right? They spend a tiny little money. He goes, I'm so sorry. And he does an op-ed with the exact talking points from the Chamber of Commerce. Like almost word for word, saying, oh, the filibuster is dangerous and we need something bipartisan and I hate the For the People Act and I'm against it, right? Okay, what happens next? Chamber of Commerce just starts sending him checks. Now that's a different group. That's the collection of all the business, all the corporations, right? And they're like, good job, good boy. You wrote it exactly as we told you, dog. Write it again, dog. So who's the actual boss? It's certainly not Joe Biden. And it's not actually Joe.
He's not a good boy.
Yeah, and it's not Joe Manchin. The actual boss is the Chamber of Commerce, the corporate machines. And finally on this, for now at least, look at what happens when you apply public pressure. Now here I get to say I told you. So I asked progressives in Congress, we elected the Just Democrats to be aggressive and not just on theoretical stuff, but yes, even though it's uncomfortable, to call out your so-called colleagues. They call you out all the time. I mean, Ilhan Omar can say the most reasonable thing on planet Earth. Hey, maybe the International Criminal Court should adjudicate the cases in front of them, right? Oh my gosh, she's anti-American. Fellow Democrats pummel her, right? Now, finally, the Just Democrats did do it. Credit where credit is due. Jamal Bowman was the strongest on this, but then AOC also came in and rallied. And those two single-handedly said corporate agenda, started talking about corporate Democrats, and all of a sudden, look at this, the press is covering it. Because that's how public pressure works.
Yes. Bridget?
Yeah, I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth, including all of the impressions of Joe Manchin. I think that people like to believe that because he's in a conservative state, he has to be like this. But as you said, his constituents want things like changes to the filibuster, raising the minimum wage, things like this. They support the For the People Act. And he is so out of step with the wants and the needs of his constituents. It's so obvious that he is not interested in actually governing or supporting their actual needs. He's interested in cashing corporate checks. It's so obvious, it's very simple. And it gets so frustrating, the amount of power, the grip that this one person has over our democracy, this person who is very clearly not interested in governing in any meaningful way.
Exactly. Yeah, and especially that he's wielding the influence over something like the For the People Act, which a very similar bill he co-sponsored just 2 years ago. It's desperately needed considering the bills that have been passing. On the Damage Report, Bridget and I talked today about how many have already passed and hundreds more are pending. The issue is that what I love about this story is that it combines both forms of the assault on American democracy. You have the renewed efforts to suppress the vote as much as possible and to set up, stealing of election later and that sort of thing. And then you also have Joe Manchin, who's being influenced in the old school way. Like hypothetically in West Virginia, you might have been able to vote to get a senator, but you don't get a senator who cares about your vote, you get a senator who cares about his donations. And all that's totally legal. They don't need to change any laws to get that sort of influence over democracy. They just write out a check, and they get it anytime they want.
Yeah, so one more thing. Top 3 donors in American politics that we can see with the naked eye, not the dark money guys, are number 3 is the drug companies. Number 1 is the National Association of Realtors. And if you're wondering why you have all the shady housing stories, it's because the National Association of Realtors are buying our politicians in mass, let alone the banks. But number 2 is the Chamber of Commerce. They gave $80 million last year. Now, 2 things about that. 1, that's actually the tip of the iceberg. They give a lot more in dark money. And so what you're seeing publicly and what they give to Joe Manchin is basically an appetizer. Okay, good boy, and the reason they do it publicly, even though they can and do funnel much more money in dark money to them secretly. And we're not even allowed to see it because Joe Manchin won't allow anti-corruption measures so that we can see them, right? And in fact, that's in the For the People Act. That's why he hates it. And that's why I told you from day one, there is 0% chance that guys like Joe Manchin would vote for that. By the way, it's not just him. There's at least 10 other corporate Democrats, according to Washington Post, that are hiding behind Manchin. Go, don't let him see our donors. Don't let him see our donors. That's in the For the People Act, and it would disclose their dark money donors, and that's the last thing they want. Because then you see the whole iceberg of how deeply, deeply corrupt Joe Manchin and other corrupt corporate Democrats are, let alone the entirety of all of the Republican senators. But even the 80 million, that's the tip of the iceberg. You think the giant multinational corporations are giving $80 million to American politicians for what? Charity?
They like their style.
Like, it really, does anybody think like, well, they gave a little bit of cancer and a little bit to heart disease, and then they gave some to politicians. Oh, they have no interest in how they're voting. And the politicians who took all those millions of dollars, they were totally unaffected because they're saints. If you think that, you're in luck. You can get a job with any mainstream media outlet. Apply now, and they'll be like, oh great, you're one of like the 7 people in the country who are schmucks enough who think that our politicians are not corrupt. Come on in, there's not enough of you, we'll hire all of you. So mainstream media, where are you? This is a piece by Salon. Right, at least they're progressive, right? And it's good to have other progressives writing about this, etc. Mainstream media, you still haven't figured out corporate donations? You still haven't figured it out? Every reporter, every editor in the country should be fired if they don't understand that corporate donations at a bare minimum have a lot to do with how the Joe Manchins of the world vote and how they act. If they deny that, then they're obviously part of the game. They're not at all interested in challenging power. They're interested in the status quo because guess what? Hey, look at that, they're also multi-billion-dollar corporations.
Well, Cenk, that was just the appetizer. If you liked Manchin, I got another one for you.
All right,
okay, as we transition to this. Let's say that hypothetically, Democrats, the media, were able to push Joe Manchin, sort of the out in front, most hardcore defender of the filibuster at this point, to switching his position. that would not necessarily be mission accomplished, because there are others, and not just in West Virginia, in much more liberal states that effectively just agree with him. They haven't received as much attention, but they're about to. Let's see, we've got Senator Dianne Feinstein, who broke with her colleagues who've been recently saying that they would choose democracy by scrapping the filibuster if Republicans try to block the For the People Act, their sweeping election reform bill. She says, if democracy were in jeopardy, I would want to protect it, but I don't see it being in jeopardy right now. She says we should just wait and see what happens with HR 1. And when asked if there were any filibuster reform measures she would support, literally come up with anything you want, she would say, I'd have to take a look. Right now, nothing comes to my mind.
Yeah, well, there's a reason for that. Look, Feinstein was a classic corrupt corporate Democrat for decades. The corporate media covered for her over and over and over again. As recently as her last run in 2018, she still had outrageous positions. She was against the war on drugs. A Just Democrat ran against her, Allison Hartson. She now works here. And Allison, well, obviously wanted to legalize drugs like the entire state of California. And it forced Feinstein to finally switch her position in 2018. All along, she's been like, oh no, drugs, marijuana is a gateway drug. We should make sure that the drug companies make as much money as possible with artificial. I mean, it's very dangerous. It's very dangerous, okay? And she was for the death penalty. She's deeply, deeply conservative, right? Joe Sandberg recently came out very powerful and influential progressive in California, saying, I made a mistake. I should have run against Feinstein in 2018. I should have done it. We cannot let this stand. But still, she's a little bit of a different situation, because at this point, she's an obvious, no one disputes this, is in mental decline. Like, she cannot remember what another senator, Schumer, what her staff told her yesterday. So that's why when they ask her, hey, is there anything you would do for electoral reform? She's like, oh, everything's great. Isn't it 1990 when I'm a Republican and pretending to be a Democrat and no one ever challenges me on it? And that's what the game we've all been playing, right? Because she forgot. She forgot, no, you're supposed to pretend harder these days, right? And so Gavin Newsom openly talks about who he would replace her with, because every Democrat knows that, I don't know what her particular disease is, I don't know if it's Alzheimer's, whatever it is, right? But she can't remember anything. She's in complete mental decline. But corporate media, nothing. Oh no, it's totally fine, totally fine. But Feinstein, good, and they don't even call her a conservative Democrat. This is a joke. The media is a total and utter joke. They got to get Feinstein out of the Senate instantly. But it's not just one person in mental decline who was always conservative. There's so many more. Tom Carper from Delaware is one of the most conservative senators in the whole country. Chris Coons, the other senator from Delaware, one of the most conservative Democrats for sure. But those two would rival Republicans for how anti-progressive they are in their measures. And who are they best friends with? Joe Biden. It ain't Joe Manchin, guys. We told you in previous stories. Washington Post reported there's 10 Democratic senators who are thrilled that Joe Manchin is taking all the arrows, because if all those bills came up that are in Biden's theoretical agenda, they would all vote no on all of them. Bridget.
Yeah, I mean, I know that Feinstein said that if democracy were in jeopardy, she would want to protect it, but she does not see it being in jeopardy right now. It's difficult to hear things like that and think that we're all living in the same country. When you look around, the former president just 2 weeks ago was talking about how the election was rigged and how he really won it. That repeated lie is being used to restrict voting rights all over the country, particularly for Black and brown folks. It is very difficult for me to understand how someone could not see the way that our democracy is so much in peril right now. But I guess that's how she feels. I think that it really calls into question whether or not we're sort of living in the same country. But it is very frustrating to feel like she lives in a completely different country than the rest of us.
Yeah. So many Democrats aren't going to do anything about the filibuster, and even if the filibuster were gone, Joe Manchin says that he literally opposes the For the People Act now, despite having co-sponsored it in the past. So it's not looking like that's gonna pass. Now, he does support the John Lewis Act, and he says, well, don't worry, that's awesome. Doesn't go nearly as far, but we can get a bunch of Republicans to support it. They're not gonna support it. They have no interest in that either, obviously. So what are we gonna get? What limited thing, what shield are we gonna have against the nonstop onslaught against democracy from Republicans across the country? Well, We have this, I guess. Earlier today, Attorney General Merrick Garland announced that the DOJ would double its voting rights staff while condemning a number of recently passed state laws and issuing a stern warning that the department, it is strongly worded, that the department would combat voter restrictions that run afoul of the law. That's sort of the issue though. They're changing the laws. I understand he means federal law, but that needs to be strengthened too. Anyway, the Justice Department, notably during the Trump era, didn't hire a single outside attorney for the voting rights section. That's so weird. What an oversight. And left the department with just 15 voting rights lawyers, about half the number that staffed the section during the Obama years. It's almost like they didn't care about it at all. Garland says the department will also take measures to limit gerrymandering while setting guidelines for absentee and mail voting ahead of the 2022 midterm elections.
If I understood that right, he said we're going to double what they have now. That would just bring it back to where it was under Obama. Ooh.
It's like the refugee cap.
Okay, wow, exactly, unfortunately. So 43 states have already passed, or there's been 43 proposed legislation. No.
But 22 passed, I think.
Yeah,
48 states have had them.
Well, Salon says that, this is a direct quote, Manchin isn't moved by the GOP voter suppression bills in 43 states. So they haven't passed, but they've been proposed in 43 states, and they have passed in dozens of states.
Yes.
And so Feinstein's like, I don't see it. Manchin says, well, if there's a problem with democracy, then we should step into action. And I'm just trying to protect democracy. Well, no, but they already passed the laws. They already passed them in the red states. And now Merrick Garland comes in and says, we will uphold the law. Yeah, but the states administer the elections, and their laws now are that not as many black and brown people get the vote. So how would upholding those laws help to actually bring voting rights to as many American citizens as possible?
No, it's super easy. If federal law and state law disagree, then theoretically it'll just work its way through the courts up to the Supreme Court. Oh, wait. Yeah, there's some issues there. I'll grant you that. Bridget?
Yeah, I mean, in a democracy, we should be making it easier for folks to vote, not harder. And it's pretty obvious that that's not what's going on here.
Yeah. Well, one of the weirdest bits of news of the day is coming up, as well as Tucker Carlson hosting an insanely creepy weirdo guest to talk about AOC having kids or not. We've got that coming up after this.
Back on TYT. First, you need to panic. Too Strong Coffee has Father's Day bundles. They're great deals. I'm doing the caffeinated dad bundle, which makes sense because I am quite the caffeinated dad. I shot a super goofy ad for it. You'll see soon.
Oh, no.
My son was the director, and you hear my kids. I am very surprised by the Too Strong Coffee I got for Father's Day. Anyway,
be more surprised, Dad.
But the special's gonna run out on Monday because you guys got to get it in time for Father's Day. Okay, so that's why I'm kidding around about panicking. TooStrongCoffee.com/TYT, and a lot of them have the mugs in it, and Uprising and Rebel Roast brands, etc. John, you wanted to say something?
Yes, every once in a while, fans of the show will send in awesome things that either feature dragons prominently or sometimes things that they make. We've had mugs sent in, and glassworks, and art, and metalwork, and stuff like that. Well, Dirge sent in this awesome dragon-themed dice bag for me because he knows that I'm a nerd. I just wanted to thank Dirge. Normally, I thank people on the pre-show, but today's a Friday, so thank you, Dirge, for sending this. I'm gonna get some use out of it over the weekend.
All right, rock and roll, wonderful. Now, speaking of the members, let's talk more about that. Little Mac McG wrote in the member section, I wonder when it'll be my turn to get millions of dollars from corporations because they love donating money at random without care what's in it for them. Nice job, nice job. That's a great comment. I wish I did that in the middle of the story, but it's hard to keep up with all the comments as I'm yelling. But yes, but isn't it amazing? We all laugh. I mean, we literally, everyone in the studio just LOL'd, right? Every mainstream media journalist actually believes that. Oh, it's just totally random. The Chamber of Commerce gives money to politicians randomly. The drug companies give randomly.
If you ask Jake Tapper, is a corporate donation a bribe, what would he say?
Oh, he would be outraged. He would literally be outraged.
He wouldn't pretend to get it? Like he wouldn't pretend?
No, he would be, he would say, he would try to get you off the air. I'm not kidding, I'm not kidding.
Well, he kept me off the air.
Yeah, but look, by the way, that actually literally happened to me when I ran for Congress. I kept calling them bribes, and the media was livid over it.
Yeah.
What? You're supposed to challenge the powerful, you schmucks. But it wasn't just they were neutral, they would yell at me. It's just unbelievable.
They get bribed with campaign ads.
They do, it's totally right. Anyway, Mickey C. the Silver-Haired Dragon says, Cenk, you're asking the right wing to be logical. We want to let immigrants in to vote Dem, yet Biden isn't letting them in. Kind of like it's the left who stormed the Capitol because they wanted to stop the count that would prove they won. That's their logic, exactly. No logic at all. All right, and a new member 00083, hit the join button below, love you for it. We're right back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, John, and Bridget with you guys. I'm going to just read one quick YouTube super chat. Trisha Briggs wrote in, been a while since my last super chat. Awesome power panel today and major props for Indisputable. Fantastic show. Love that it's part of the TYT network.
Nice.
Right there with you, sister. Dr. Rashad Ritchie is literally indisputable. So subscribe for free at youtube.com/TYT Indisputable. You get to see his live show. You get to see the clips afterwards. And then of course, if you're a member here, you can catch any of our shows anytime. Hit the join button below or tyt.com/join. But anyway, we're super proud of Rashad, and it's a wonderful new show. It's right after Damage Report. And you can just keep on watching the network right after that. It's at 2:30 p.m. Eastern every day. All right, John.
Okay, this should be a fun one. The Senate recently passed a bill, a $247 billion bill to, they say, increase American competitiveness in scientific research. But one area of that research has caused Fox News to lose it a little bit. Now, this is about science, so I go to Fox to know how to think about things like this. Here is Fox News's Tammy Bruce.
Human chimeras living among us, it's only science fiction for right now. Yesterday, the Senate passed the Endless Frontier Act, a bill that commits nearly $250 billion to promote emerging technologies so that America can keep pace with Chinese innovation. Back in May, Democrats shot down an important amendment outlawing US participation in research that would create human-animal hybrids. Chimeric research is a Pandora's box that's obviously from hell that should not be opened. But the scientific community, spurred on by their own hubris, may very well open it using American taxpayer dollars. And if that happens, the Democrats will have blood on their hands for not joining the GOP and stopping it when they had a chance. Give me your take on the seriousness of this. China's doing it and what we have to be aware of.
You know, Tammy, one of the things that strikes me the most about this story is there's an old adage, be careful of what you don't know. And that has never been more true than with this subject. What exactly do we not know here?
So much you don't know. What do you know? We can save some time. Wait, I understand that this is not the focus of the story. We're gonna be talking about chimeric research and all that. And I'm gonna say the word chimera more as much as I've always dreamed to, but never been able to. She just said it's from hell. A Fox host just said a piece of legislation was from the Christian hell. That was on Fox News. It wasn't the 700 Club. And then she just moved on.
Yeah, Fox News is taking their scaremongering and fearmongering to an entire new level, talking about how legislation is literally from hell.
That is amazing. Okay, so what is it? Because they want to know. They want to know what they don't know and all that stuff. Well, chimeric research, which makes human-animal hybrids in very loose terms, she just puts up a picture of the outline of a head and a pig. It doesn't make pig people. This isn't an episode of Seinfeld. That's not actually what they're doing. Now, yes, you can create chimeras. They are human-animal hybrids, but they're not half human, half bat. Okay, Christian Bale, calm down. You're not being replaced by the real thing. The amendment, which they tried to pass, defines human-animal chimera as various combinations of human and non-human DNA, such as a human embryo into which non-human cells have been introduced, making the species of the embryo uncertain. Okay, I'm done. I'm done with this because that's not actually true. What you need to know is chimeras are like when a mouse is given rat DNA, so a mouse grows a rat's liver, so that we can learn about the possible application of making organs that can be transplanted into humans. So for instance, right now, you can in some ways grow organs in pigs and put them into humans, but the human immune system is likely to reject them. That's the way it works. Now, in theory, if you could get a healthy human heart with human DNA to grow in a pig, it'd be much more likely to be accepted in a human body. We do experiments where very briefly embryos of certain types of animals will have some human DNA in them. They don't last, they don't come out with human arms on the side of a giraffe. That's not how any of this works, and it takes literally seconds to figure that out.
Okay, so first of all, if you watch Fox News, you would think that we're using federal government money for this. Of course we're not, right? You would think that we're combining man and pig and perhaps bear, but no, we're not doing any of that. In terms of it, nothing has ever been born. These are embryos, okay? Now, I know the pro-life people are like, no, I can't exist for a nanosecond because I'm pro-life. But wait, we're trying to create these organs that would save people's lives. No, let them die, let them die. Which party are you from? Pro-life party. Okay, maybe you should find a different word because I'm not sure you know what that word means. And then, so look guys, if you were having a real conversation about this, which we're going to try to do here a little bit, it's very interesting and it's not that you shouldn't be at all concerned. So like when you have, when they tried it with pigs, again, embryos, they're all in petri dishes. There's no human pig combo that's ever been born, right? But even then, the human genes that stick in those embryos is 1 out of 100,000. So it's nearly, it basically doesn't work, is my layman's interpretation of that. John knows a little bit about it more than I do, right? But when they tried, so they tried it with monkeys. Now this is where it gets interesting. The genes they saw in those cells were 3 to 4% human, and one got up to as much as 7% human. Now I'm getting uncomfortable, okay? And you don't have to believe that it's from hell or anything like that, and it's not a Satan's spawn, right? But
well, there's one island where a Dr. Moreau has been doing some pretty interesting research, but beyond that, I don't think they've made anything we should be too worried about.
Yeah, no, it hasn't been made. Absolutely not. Nothing's ever born. We don't use US government money, and it's not done in the US. It's done in China, right? So all those things are misleading. I want to let Bridget come in, and then I want to ask John a question about the substance. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. I'm not gonna pretend to be a scientist who knows the ins and outs of this, but it really just sounds like another way for the right to fearmonger, more anti-science, anti-choice rhetoric. I would be interested to know more about this technology and this research, but again, because they have to take it to this extreme, they have to say this is from hell, you're gonna see pigmen, all of this. We can't even have a measured conversation about what's actually happening in reality because they're too busy with their anti-science fearmongering.
Yeah, so that's definitely settled. We're clear on that one. But John, if you can get to 4% or 7% human, theoretically you could get 25% human. And now if you have an embryo, theoretically it could be implanted.
Okay, so as far as I have seen, and I'm not an expert either, they're not creating like true mixtures that are 25%. Like there's remnants of DNA, or there's one organ or something like that, and always of species that are very close together. This isn't chimpanzee and octopus. I know we've all wanted that. That's not what it is. It's mouse and rat. It's human and chimp. It's things that are already genetically as close as possible to each other.
Yes, but what does Beelzebub think?
I don't know. He sent it, I guess. My fear is that, look, first of all, they know exactly what they're doing at Fox News. They put this out there, and what do you think people on Facebook are gonna do with this segment? Okay, they already think there's lizard people out there. And my worry in this area is that a conspiracy theory is always gonna do best when it's a little bit easier to accept, when it seems like there's evidence of it. So for instance, they're gonna start to look out there and say, well, there's a senator from West Virginia. He has traits of a dog sometimes. Kentucky, possible turtle hybrid. There's a possum senator right now in Texas. And so really irresponsible people are gonna run with this thing, and God knows what they're gonna believe in a few months.
John, you were counterproductive there, because now all of a sudden, man turtle, I mean, we've all seen it. We've all seen it. And speaking of which, I mean, look at John, half human, half dragon.
That's true.
Okay, a little bit of a chimera right there. No wonder he's covering up for other chimeras. No, but seriously, look, it's not impossible. And so
bring it on. Honestly, what are we holding on to with this world, with this society? Bring it on.
No, don't bring it on.
Half raccoon dog? I'd take that.
No, they're not gonna do that. But the genes of a human inside of a monkey embryo is fascinating. That's all I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
And so we don't need to pass bills about non-existent things we're not actually doing in America, and we can't make the Chinese stop, right?
Yeah, well, how would we?
So it's not. It's like when they voted to make sure that there'd be no Sharia law in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Mission accomplished. Okay, it wasn't a real danger, but if Chinese, the North Koreans, etc., and you have this, and it has some degree, I don't know. If I go any further, I'm way out of my league on science.
There are gonna be town halls where there's gonna be 100 parents like, stop experimenting on my kid with chimpanzee genes. Tomorrow, watch, you're gonna see it. This is unfortunately C-SPAN footage. Oh my God, it's working.
I guarantee you that this was part of what drove it.
Definitely, oh sweet tooth, you ruined us.
Okay, no, I'm serious. I guarantee you that the right wingers watch. Look, man, I know older folks who don't understand that movies aren't real. Okay,
no.
So,
yeah,
and then
one of them was a senator from California.
You put in right wingers and the things that they think, and then you sprinkle in Satan.
Yeah,
right. They're gonna say, "Oh, sweet, that's how we knew it. I saw it right there."
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Okay.
I can see, but I have a mermaid tail. I don't actually have legs. I have a mermaid tail. I'm a half woman, half fish. You guys can see it.
I saw that movie. Anyway, we got to move on. I will leave you with a thought experiment. If you do create a human-monkey hybrid, have you improved a human or ruined a monkey? Think about that for a little bit. Anyway, let's move on to this. Speaking of fertilization, be careful what you wish for, Tucker Carlson, as we move into this. Tucker Carlson had a guest on to talk about, I swear, this is a conversation about the use of pronouns that people prefer, which turns into a conversation about how the left hates sex and doesn't want babies to be born somehow, and it gets even worse from there. Take a look.
What are the more subtle implications of a declining fertility rate?
Well, most people point to the economy as the driver of the problem. People just aren't having kids because they can't afford it. And I think there's actually a cultural driver going on, Tucker. Really, there's this cultural dogma that's telling little girls that their greatest value in society is to the extent that they can maneuver to monetize their talents and abilities. You saw this over Mother's Day weekend with prominent publications, prominent feminists who were really denigrating motherhood and extolling intentional childlessness. You can see it in the Biden plan to $225 billion to have nationalized daycare to get bodies into the workforce. It's essentially, Tucker, you could say, handmaids of capitalism that's being pushed. When the truth of the matter is, women still want to be mothers. And they're essentially cauterizing their hearts to put off having children, put off having more than one child, to go into the workforce, establish their careers first, and they run out of time.
Okay, I apologize. That is Rebecca Heinrichs of the Hudson Institute trying to take the obvious and fair critique that the GOP is being modeled after Gilead and Handmaid's Tale to just flip everything on its head. But we don't have much time, so I want to play the third video for this block so we can combine our commentary of that. It's feminism has ruined women and has trained them to not want kids, and now it's going to get even creepier.
Men and women come together and create new life. Like the whole thing is repulsive to them. Why is that?
Well, I think it's because it started with the feminist movement that they felt that impaired a woman's future. But I think it also reflects reality, Tucker, that the age when people are getting married, having children, buying a home, buying a house has gone from mid-20s to mid-30s. And our crisis right now is that we're not reproducing ourselves. We're about 1.8 rather than 2.1 or 2. And we're suffering from what? Prolonged adolescence. These children, they have adult bodies, but they have the minds of children. They don't want to grow up. AOC is a good example of a person who's suffering from prolonged adolescence, but they just don't want to take off their training wheels and go out and experience life and its adventures and dangers.
So AOC, I believe at the time that she was elected, the youngest congresswoman in American history, is a prolonged adolescent, the body of an adult, but really a child's mind. She's only fundamentally changed the way the entire United States thinks about climate policy and a number of other things, raising it to the top of our political awareness. But she's basically just a child's brain in an adult's body.
That's why you guys spend 24/7 attacking her, because she's not important, right? If she's just a child, that's why 80% of your programming centers around her. Okay, so, but let's now go to the heart of the issue here. And there was an interesting stew of talking points in there. And there was one in there that was really interesting. So first, you have the standard Fox News stuff. Women, what are you doing? Get back in the kitchen and in the bedroom. Your job is to make babies, your baby machines, because we need boys. I mean, yeah, I guess you make girls every once in a while too, but that's not important. We're gonna control their bodies too. So before they were like, hey, we don't want you to have choice over your own body in reproductive issues. Now they're going further. No, you must create babies, right? And so, no, I don't want you going to work. Get back at home, but you saw it right there. They're like, we have a fertility problem. If you watch the longer clips of those, Tucker's like obsessed with fertility. By the way, of course, he doesn't mean for all Americans. Let's keep it real. In other segments, they have talked about how white people are having fertility issues, and as a former Congressman King said, we can't reproduce our civilization with other people's babies, okay? And they're particularly concerned about Latino babies in this case because they think they have high fertility rates and white people don't. And so they're saying, no, it's a trick, white people, okay? And now the second part of that, that's 1955, that it reveals their complete hand. They're totally sexist. It's the most sexist thing in the world, that to view women as just basically chattel to produce babies for themselves. And then the second portion of it is, it's totally disconnected from today's reality. Why do you think women are in the workforce? Why do you think like both partners are constantly working? Because you can't make enough money. The wages are so damn low. If you have 2 minimum wage workers in that family and they work the entire year with no days off, congratulations, your family combined, both of you together, made a little over $30,000. Not individually, the whole family. So you want the mom to go and you want them to have a kid and all the expenses of a kid. Now that only the dad's working and he's making $15,000. How the hell are they gonna afford that? They're not having kids because they're being rational. They have no earthly prayer of being able to afford it. And who created that? You created that, Tucker Carlson. Fox News created that. Republicans created that. Lower wages, crush them, right? And to this day, you're still arguing against higher wages for American workers. But then comes the really interesting and weird part of it. Handmaids of capitalism? And several times in that segment, both his guest and Tucker Carlson spoke out against capitalism. What in the world is going on at Fox News? They have created some sort of weird chimera.
It's fake populism.
Right? Of populism and that's anti-capitalist, while pushing for laws that are uber capitalist, that are massively runaway capitalism. but disguising it as, of all things, to sell it to the Fox News audience as socialism. They're like, don't worry guys, we hate capitalism, go socialism. The real problem is the goddamn capitalists are making the women work. How is that for topsy-turvy?
I think you're exactly right. I mean, this is such an insult to women. They know their policies have failed women, so they're just trying to paint feminism as this boogeyman because they have nothing else to offer. Women, especially women of color, are really struggling economically right now. And if Republicans really cared about fostering the next generation of young women, they would really be advocating for things like paid leave, abortion access, raising the minimum wage. But just this past week, they voted against the Paycheck Fairness Act. So I don't know why they're acting like they don't know why some women are delaying motherhood. It's economic instability, and I think their policies are really what got us here.
Yeah. And by the way, a super fast last point, the weirdo Heritage Foundation guy that they had, he at least acknowledged briefly that they say it's because of $1.7 trillion in student loan debt and the economy's doing really bad, but let's move on and pretend that they're in training wheels. Again, super weird to say that someone's on training wheels when they ran for and primaried out a Democrat and became a congresswoman. But really fast, let's bring up this chart. Here is maybe what you could do if you want people to have more kids. When you ask people why they're having fewer, childcare is too expensive, 64% say. Let's see, they want more time with the children they have, not much you're gonna do about that, but worried about the economy, can't afford more children, waited because of financial instability. Let's see, there's no paid family leave, comes up twice there, global instability. There's a lot of stuff there that in theory, the government could do to help. Look at that, the number one thing, 64% is childcare. Well, why don't we have some sort of system of government childcare? If you wanna make sure that people feel free to have all the babies that you want, well, that's one way that you could do it. But he's not gonna engage with that.
I've gotta say two last things. One is a comment on that. All the Republicans just voted against childcare. So if you're pro-life and you want people to have more babies, why in the God's green earth would you vote against childcare? You would do that because you don't really care about any of those things. You want to crush the average American and you want the corporations to get everything. So Tucker Carlson's propaganda is now at a different level of devious. He now understands the right-wing populism also despises multinational corporations that run our lives. So he's now flipping it and helping them by pretending to be against them. The minute he actually advocates for laws that check corporate rule, I'll give him credit, we do it all the time, right? But he doesn't. He loves corporate rule while pretending to be against it. Now, finally, Bridget, I gotta ask you a question. So they made assumptions about AOC's intentions, right? She has said comments before about how she's concerned about having kids for all the same reasons many young women are. And she's also said she was looking forward to having kids, but for the purposes of lying to their audience, they pretended that she was against having kids herself and that it was because of climate change. Now, as you saw in the poll there, I don't know where climate change was, but it wasn't at the very top, right? It was real economic concerns that were at the top. But Bridget, how much agency does it take away from women for these men to be talking on air about what you should do and how you should be having babies? And I cannot understand Republican women. I just cannot understand them that look at that and go, yeah, oh yeah, I can't wait for these guys, these old creepy guys to control my body.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It is so insulting and infantilizing. The way they talk about AOC just in general is disgusting. But first they talk about her like she's some sort of girl, like the body of a woman and a girl's head, and then they go on to infantilize her, talking about what she should be doing with her body. These are people who their entire mission in life is to control women and our bodies and make decisions that should be ours on our behalf. And yeah, it's completely infantilizing and very insulting. I think any woman, whether you decide to have children or not, whether you're a parent or not, should hear this and be really insulted by the way that these old white men are talking about our bodies and what we should and should not do with them.
Yeah, and wait till they get a load of Bridget's podcast. It's No Girls on the Internet. So when Tucker Carlson gets a load of that, he's definitely doing a story. We knew it. There's less babies because of Bridget. She says there's no girls on the internet. And you work for UltraViolet, which is a feminist group. Oh my God, they're gonna have a field day with that. Good luck with that. All right, guys, we're way out of time. Everybody check out Damage Report. Everybody check out No Girls on the Internet. Bridget, you're wonderful for joining us. We appreciate it. When we come back, Ben Dixon's gonna join us, and we have more insanity from both Republicans and unfortunately Democrats. We'll be right back.
Can you name the representative of your district?
The representative of my district, oof.
I have no idea.
I actually don't know who the representative of my district is.
Do you know what the corporate tax rate is?
I think it's pretty high. I should know this.
Like in between 20 and 25%. I don't know.
How many amendments are in the US Constitution?
Oh no. This brings me back to grade school.
I should know this because I was a history major, but I do not remember. I don't know that. I don't know.
I don't know.
I have no clue. Nope. I don't know the answer to that one.
You don't know? I didn't know. It's time to change that. We live in the best country in the world. We live in the most powerful country in the world. We love our American freedom, but only half of us take part in the political process. Only half of us vote. We don't fulfill our duties as US citizens to make this country a better place. It's time that we use our voices as a team, as a country, to become better. We will stand up. We will be empowered. We will stay educated and informed about politics every single day because it's our responsibility. And Politiscope just made it easy for you. So join me, join us, and let's be Americans.
How in the world are you going to get the right to vote if you don't already have the right to vote? That's impossible. The reason they tell you things are impossible is because they don't want you to try. It only took 7 years for that to get an amendment to get a right to vote.
Does this result in millions upon millions of Americans losing their coverage? And we've been waiting to find out, and now we know, yes, it will cut millions.
Public education was supposed to be the way to equalize everyone regardless of their socioeconomic status. But if you come from a family that's poor, how are you gonna afford grade school for your kids?
This fight is about fairness and morality. It's about the American values.
You think that black people all across the country, in every city, were all lying when they said the police abuse and the police kill us when they should? No, of course they weren't lying. Yes, it does happen. Yes, they do get targeted more.
Why are we going to put immigrants in prison for 5 years, which American taxpayers have to pay for, if we're so concerned with immigrants using up our so-called resources?
We're gonna do both. We're gonna fight Trump and we're gonna fight the establishment. It's not that hard. Yes, you can do both at the same time. Go tell them.
ShopTYT.com has new shirts like this one. And you're thinking, Cenk, what is that one? I can't see it other than the black. Yes, so I'll show it to you. If you can read this, you're not practicing social distancing. Yes! Now, you were practicing social distancing. This is over video. But overall, you get it, ShopTYT.com. Drop it. All right, look at this new power panel. Cenk, you're Benjamin Dixon from You're Gonna Be Shocked, the Benjamin Dixon Show. And Lance from the Serfs from You're Gonna Be Shocked, twitch.tv/the Serfs TV. So Ben and Lance, great to have you guys.
Good to be here. Good to be here as always.
Thank you so much for having us.
Of course. So we've got a crazy hour for you guys. And usual government abuses and then right-wing absurdities. So I'm gonna let Ben do the honors, of course. Ben, take it away.
Cenk, it wouldn't be another week in this country without the killing of another black man. 32-year-old Winston Smith was killed by federal marshals in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and you would recognize the name of the city because that city has been reeling in the wake of the George Floyd murder over a year ago, the Derek Chauvin trial, the Dante Wright murder that took place during the Chauvin trial, and now the murder of Winston Smith. I want to read this one quote saying that 32-year-old Winston Smith killed by federal marshals in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Original reports Winston was wanted on murder charges, but authorities later said the task force members were looking for a man wanted on a warrant for being a felon in possession of a gun. So in other words, the original report that came out stated that he was wanted for murder, and that was the cover under which the authorities were going to, that was the warrant that they were seeking to execute. But as information came out, it says that Winston Smith was not actually wanted for murder. He was wanted for missing trial and for the possible possession of a firearm. Two totally different reasons to be going after someone and two totally different ways of looking at the case. There was a woman who was in the car with him, and this is what she said, or rather this is a quote about her. A woman who says she was with Winston Smith when he was killed by police said Thursday through her attorneys that she never saw a gun on Smith and never saw one in his vehicle, contradicting the initial law enforcement reports. State investigators say Smith, 32, fired a gun from his vehicle as deputies closed in, although there's no body camera or squad dash cam footage of the shooting. And Cenk and Lance, this is I don't want to say the odd thing because we're starting to get used to whether or not body cams are optional at this point. Right, we spend all kind of money when we talk about reform. We always talk about spending more money for more training and all we see in more technology. But we see now more than ever what they do is they have training to cut off the technology. And so they haven't made it clear whether or not there's any footage at all, Cenk, but they are making it clear that there's no body cam or dash cam footage. And so it's kind of murky at this point, but yet again, in the same city where so many things have been happening over the last year, yet another murder of a black man by authorities, this time federal marshals.
All right, so first let me jump in and clarify three things that I can tell you that we know well enough. All right, so number one, the Minnesota Justice Coalition President Jonathan McCollins questioned why law enforcement, according to the Minneapolis Post, why law enforcement would not want to release footage if they believe their actions were justified. Okay, so it appears that there probably is footage and they are not releasing it because their actions were not justified. Okay, number two, the United States Marshals right now don't wear body cameras. I would never believe law enforcement that choose not to wear body cameras if they tell me, oh, just take my word for what happened in that shooting, just trust me on it. No, the answer is a hard no. That is overwhelming evidence shows that when police don't show you the video and they tell you something happened and then they show you the video later, they're almost always lying. We did a story just a couple of weeks ago where the police said that a guy that they had chased had run into a tree and hit the tree and died. And then they released the video and it turns out, no, he had not hit a tree. They dragged him out of the car, handcuffed him, dragged him by his feet face first and pummeled him and beat him to death. So now in the case of the marshals, first they say, oh, he's wanted for murder. Then they say, well, maybe not wanted for murder. Then they say he had a weapon and then discharged the weapon. But wait, let's break it down. So that gets me to conclusion number three. the members' task force said that the person at hand here, Winston Smith, had, quote, made contact, or the marshals had made contact with him, Smith. Made contact with him. Okay, that's a curious way of phrasing it. Then they said it was, quote, in an attempt to take him into custody. So these are weird, vague descriptions, okay? But it gets way weirder. According to them, at one point, a Hennepin County Sheriff's Deputy and Ramsey County Sheriff's Deputy serving on the task force discharged their weapons, striking the man. No. When somebody's a danger to the cops in any way, shape, or form, and we've covered this 1,000 times, oh, they were driving in my vicinity. They called that, oh, attempted murder. The guy was coming to get me. It was the worst thing that ever happened. Me and everyone I knew in town was in danger, and I had to kill him on the spot, right? This is not that. This is the task force discharged their weapon, happening to strike the man. That doesn't sound like you were in imminent danger, but it gets worse. I'm reading from the Minnesota Post again. Early stages of the BCA investigation found evidence Smith fired his weapon from inside the vehicle. The BCA reported crime scene personnel, quote, recovered a handgun as well as spent cartridge cases from inside the driver's compartment. It's still unclear whether the gun was fired during this encounter or not. Now, there is no way that he fired at the cops and they didn't say it. Okay, this loose talk about there was a gun and it was discharged at some time. No, if they killed him and he fired at them, they would definitely tell you that he fired at them. So I'm telling you right now, I guarantee you that they're lying. Lance.
I just wanted to say two quick things. One, yes, the US Marshals don't have to wear body cameras, but what's more intriguing is that local law enforcement apparently, they can be told by US Marshals that they have to turn their body cameras off, which is also super messed up. But speaking to Ben's points, like there's this, I find right-wing conservatives like to say after the fact, whether it's like Derek Chauvin or whoever gets murdered by the police, that he was bad because he actually was taking drugs or he was high on fentanyl or whatever it was, or in this case, he had priors to all that. That doesn't really matter to me. I don't think that gives cops the ability to be able to act as Judge Dredd in these cases, right? Like it just seems like time and time again, when the cops are acting as the executioners in this case, and we don't even know what really happened because we don't have the body cam footage. On top of everything else, do we have to justify it after the fact because he was actually a danger to society? That's not the way any of this is supposed to work.
Yeah, sorry, Ben, go ahead.
No. I was gonna say it shouldn't work like that, but you just outline the way, the method that they use every single time. It's like not only of these families are having to grieve the loss of their loved ones, but they're also having to go into full PR mode to protect the reputation and the legacy of that person before they've even had a chance to have a funeral. Because these are massive PR machines, Cenk, as you were pointing out, the language that they use there, it's massively passive and insidious. I mean, they're saying just enough to cause confusion and the plausible deniability in the minds of people reading it and to protect their police officers. So you're not only having to fight on the reality these families have lost loved ones, but now they're also having to go into full PR professional mode in order to protect the reputations of their loved ones.
So it's not that you don't need US Marshals or policing. Of course you do, right? There's serious crimes afoot. And Winston Smith did something he clearly should not have done. It was 4 years ago. It was assault and robbery of his ex-girlfriend. He was sentenced to 2 years in prison. But apparently, for whatever reason, the sentence was stayed for 3 years. I don't know if it was his first offense or something. So he never even actually went to prison. That's the decision that the court system made. So you get the sense of the severity of the crime. He did not even go to prison, okay? Now, does that mean they shouldn't have gone to get, oh, by the way, the reason they were going to get him is because then apparently he had a firearm, which is a violation of the term, so he had to go to prison. So should they have gone to pick him up? Yes, yes. It's not to minimize those crimes. Those crimes are serious, okay? But should someone be executed? I mean, and right wing, be really careful in your answer here. Should someone be executed for having a firearm when they shouldn't? Because they went to go pick him up for having a firearm when he shouldn't. Okay, no, of course, it doesn't matter if you're left or right wing. If you're a decent person, an American citizen, you know that they should not be executed for that. They should be apprehended. So when the U.S. Marshals say, somebody happened to discharge a weapon and the guy happened to get hit and he happened to die and he had a weapon in his car and it was discharged at some point, you know that he did not fire at them. There's no way in the world the U.S. Marshals, who are desperately trying to hide the criminal in their ranks who shot and killed Winston Smith, is going to tell you that is not going to tell you that they were fired at if they were fired at. Okay, so I would bet any amount of money. So if you're still one of those folks who grew up on mainstream media and you watch local news and they told you all the cops are great and you watch the movies and the TV shows and NYPD Blue and they're just the world's greatest human beings and they never ever lie. Okay, look, man, there's a lot of bridges to sell you, and COVID vaccine causes people to be magnetic, and even though Trump lost 60 court cases, there were millions of votes that none of the courts could find. I know you'll believe anything, but for the rest of us, no. Every action by the U.S. Marshals in this case indicates that they did something deeply wrong, and they're trying very hard to hide it. And that goes to my last point, which is thin blue line is just a code for I'm going to protect everybody in my gang, no matter what they did wrong, including killing people like Winston Smith.
Yeah.
Well, for the record, though, I do want to say that if the COVID-19 vaccine did magnetize you, that makes me want to do it more. Like if I could become Magneto, that's a selling point to me. Sign me up.
Yeah.
Yeah, they come up with the worst conspiracy theories. Speaking of the worst, I want to talk about this bipartisan group of senators who are making their own proposition as it terms. Okay, we need an Ash. Okay.
So look.
All right, Jake. It's up to you, Jake. We want to pass it back to you.
Yeah. Okay. It's okay. Let's take our first break. Not a big deal. That's a great story that Ben just teased for you guys. We want to do that. We got more amazing stories a little bit later in the show as well. We'll be right back. All right, back on TYT. First of all, let me tell you guys about the shows that are coming up. Tonight, Common Room on Twitch. Oh, look at that, Alex Jablonski is gonna be on. Amy Stratton, editor Sierra Paul is gonna join. Brett Ehrlich, all of them are going to be on Twitch, twitch.tv/TYT. And that's tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern. So make sure you're checking that out. And the Sunday stream is with Brett Ehrlich, and that's at 6 o'clock Eastern on Sunday, also on twitch.tv/TYT. Now I'm gonna go to our member section. LMG15 wrote in, I'm sure the Second Amendment people will be furious that Winston Smith was killed for possible possession of a firearm. Oh, just like they were about Philando Castile. They just were livid about it. Oh, right, they never said anything about it because they're black and so they don't care about black people. Greg wrote in, Fox, complain that people aren't going to work, yet they also complain that women won't stay home and have babies because they want to go to work. Greg, I'm so mad at you for reminding me that I forgot that point. Okay, seriously, I was gonna make that during the show and I forgot it, and I love that you guys are smart enough that you picked up on that. All the other Fox segments, this is from the first hour, all the Fox segments go, oh, you gotta take away the unemployment checks, drive these bums back to work, have them work for the lowest wages possible, cut their payments, right? And then this Fox segment, they turn around and go, don't let the women go back to work. Make sure they're barefoot and in the kitchen, in the bedroom, producing little white babies for us, right? Don't let them go back to work. So make up your goddamn minds, Fox News. All right, don't shoot, I'm the goalkeeper, writes in, fear what you don't know. Is that why conservatives are afraid of literally everything? Yes, they circle the wagons into a very tight little group of people that look and think just like them, and they hate everyone else, primarily because they're deathly afraid. Defining trait of a conservative is usually that they're a coward. Oh my God, the others, black people are so scary, immigrants are so scary, gay people are so scary, trans people, what if they come into my bathroom, what if I'm attracted to them? I got it, fear, right? Mickey C, the silver-haired dragon, says, I had a friend whose husband was a New York City cop, and he told me that most cops carried a gun they called a drop. They kept guns discovered in raids, didn't report or turn them in, and kept them with them at all times. If they shot someone, they could then drop the gun as proof that their lives were in danger. Oh, that comes as a giant shock to me. I bet you every conservative knucklehead will be like, oh, no way, I don't believe it. Yeah, go ask a cop, okay? Keep it real on what happens in America. Thank you for writing that, and we'll be back. Back on TYT, Cenk, Ben, and Lance with you guys. And also Leslie Wiseman, because she just joined by hitting the join button below on YouTube. Who doesn't love Leslie? All right, thank you for being part of the Young Turks now. Membership makes all the difference. We're trying to drive positive change in the world. That's why we're doing the Be the Change campaign. We not only give you the news, but we actually try to make a difference in the world, and you guys can help us do that. So tyt.com/change to do that. All right, Ben, what's next?
Okay, so a bipartisan group of lawmakers came together to announce an agreement on a quote compromise framework on the infrastructure bill. There's just one problem. The compromise framework does not include any progressive priorities. Here are a couple of the details. These are the 5 senators who joined on it. The statement was issued by Senator Rob Portman of Ohio, Kirsten Sinema of Arizona. The leaders of the group that also includes Senators Bill Cassidy, Jeanne Shaheen, Susan Collins, Joe Manchin, Lisa Murkowski, John Tester, Mitt Romney, and Mark Warner. Now, while the bill needs to be passed in the Senate, they said that they were confident of the provisions. Here's what they're offering, quote, sources familiar with the deal said it would provide $974 billion over 5 years. They also said that the framework is focused on, quote, core physical infrastructure and would not increase taxes, though it would include an option to index the gas to tax inflation. Further, it would provide $579 billion in new funding over what would otherwise be spent without any new legislation. The bipartisan framework would spend only a fraction of the $4.1 trillion President Biden has called for, and includes an option to index the gas tax to inflation, which could make it a tough sell within the broader Senate Democratic caucus. Now, the gas tax was last raised in 1993, and Biden has previously indicated he is not a fan of indexing it. Mitch McConnell seems to like the proposal, which should tell us everything that we need to know about it. Quote, we haven't given up hope that we'll be able to reach a deal on something really important for the country that we really need to accomplish, and that is a major infrastructure bill. Yeah, I think it's clearly possible. We haven't given up on reaching an agreement on infrastructure. I think there's a good chance we can get there. But again, it does not include a single progressive priority. Progressives are gearing up for battle, quote. They argue that new funding over existing programs is inadequate. The progressives are specifically worried that passing a bipartisan infrastructure package consists of funding for roads, bridges, rail, public transport, airports, and rural broadband internet will make it tougher to marshal support for a bigger reconciliation package down the road. The bigger package could include many progressive prizes such as climate change legislation, $400 billion for long-term home care and language to lower the cost of the prescription drugs. Senator Bernie Sanders spoke out against the compromise policy solution, saying the following, quote, the problem is this country faces enormous issues that have been ignored and neglected for a very long period of time. Even if you look at infrastructure from the narrow perspective of roads and bridges, it's inadequate. That's not me talking, that's the American Society of Civil Engineers. Cenk, a lot there, but in the name of bipartisanship, we see a lot of things get done, but it's usually done in favor of the people. What are your thoughts?
All right, so lots to get to here. First of all, if you hear any Democrat, and that includes progressives, talking about, well, if we'll just pass this and later we'll do a bigger reconciliation package. No, you won't. That's a joke. There's not gonna be any reconciliation package after this. You think Manchin is cinema, et cetera. And by the way, Mark Warner, Tom Carper, all these corporate Democrats, they're not gonna allow a dime of that through. They're gonna say it's over. So don't kid yourself, and if you hear, including through the progressive Democrats, anybody telling you about a later package, that is a total, utter mirage. There is no later package. So the Hill did a good job of framing this here with the Biden pushing for 4.1 trillion. And there's only 579 billion in new spending here. But look, let's be even fairer to the Republicans and the corporate Democrats and say, let's just talk about the infrastructure bill. There is no question that Biden said that he wanted 2.3 trillion. Now I say to you that there's no question. Why do I even need to emphasize that? Because now I'm seeing other articles talking about, well, he said 1.7 trillion. No, he didn't. He said 2.3. You can go back and read dozens, maybe hundreds of articles about the number 2.3. Now all of a sudden some people are beginning to fudge it. And why are they doing that? Because the Democrats are beginning to fudge it, because it's humiliating how badly they're getting played here. And the reality is they're not getting played. Joe Biden is in on this scam. So they say, oh, this is 974 billion. But a lot of it is stuff we already put in the COVID relief bill. Well, that's not a thing. We already passed that. Here's how much credit I give you for that, 0. What does that mean? Okay, I'm just gonna repackage the stuff I already passed. So this is not anything new you're passing. So the part that's new is the 579 billion. Well, that's a joke. Let's take the 2.3 trillion, right? So that's about a quarter. Apparently it looks like I was wrong. I said that the best case scenario, and well, to be fair, I did say best case scenario, was that Biden actually was going to push for and maybe get 40% of the infrastructure bill. Nope, I overestimated, 25% at most, okay? So we're already down there. Why are we already down there? Wait, a lot of the articles, they take politicians at face value. So whatever they say, they write down dutifully, right? Well, they're not sure that the president's gonna go for this bipartisan bill. Here, I'm gonna tell you ahead of time. He's definitely gonna go for it. Biden is in on the scam, guaranteed, write it down in stone. So how do I know? I don't read his mind, I'm not a Swami, okay? No, I can read the details. And so here's the most important detail. Biden's White House said, according to all of these articles, that they really want $600 billion in new spending, and that's what they're pushing the Republicans for. So it's already over. The 2.3 trillion was a joke. Biden never meant it. So we're arguing over 600 billion or 579 billion. That's nothing. That's a $21 billion difference. We're not talking about trillions of dollars. No, but this is Biden's deal. This is the deal he always wanted because he's a corporate Democrat. So progressives, I asked you to wake up. They're beginning to wake up. I told you Biden was never gonna do any of this. The corporate media is nothing but liars. They all said, oh yeah, Biden's agenda, FDR 2.0. When he made his speech to Congress, we did a live play-by-play right here on the Young Turks, and I told you he doesn't mean a word of it. And I said, what's the first thing that they're gonna take out from that infrastructure bill? Anything related to the Green New Deal. That's what got the progressives excited in the first place. Oh my God, he's gonna do Green New Deal. No, he isn't. He's playing you. He's playing you. And now he's offered up to the Republicans $600 billion, no Green New Deal, no new corporate taxes at all. It's down at 21%, a comically low number that Trump brought it down to. Biden's not gonna raise it by $1. And then just to rub insult to injury, pour salt over your wounds, they're gonna say, oh, we are gonna pay for it. We are gonna increase taxes. The gas tax, which hits all of us. So the poor, the middle class, everybody else is gonna pay. The only people who aren't going to pay for this is the corporate donors of Joe Biden and the Republicans. Mystery solved. Lance.
I think the late Alex Jones put it really well when he said, There's no such thing as a compromise. After all, the Democrats are trying to turn the frogs gay. Which, I mean, at the end of the day, why are we constantly working on these kind of bipartisan deals when like Mitch McConnell has been making it very apparent that he just wants the poors to like eat his fingernails, right? Like at the end of the day, they're not working on the other end to meet Democrats halfway. There's no reaching across the aisle coming from Republicans. And I keep hearing this plea by Democrats that we have to effectively do this, otherwise we won't be able to pass legislation unless we get both sides on board. But that never seems to be the way in the other direction.
Yeah, I just got to double down on that. I wrote about this on social media earlier. When Republicans control Congress, there is never any talk of bipartisanship. And you all know it. It doesn't matter if you're right wing, independent, et cetera. You know, during Trump, there's no talk of like, hey, putting all sorts of pressure. Is Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump, are they gonna reach out to Democrats? They gotta make Democrats happy. As much as the media hated Donald Trump, so I'm being honest about it, right? And he deserved that critical coverage. But even then, they weren't like, well, how is Donald Trump gonna make Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi happy? And all the conversation was about, oh my God, bipartisanship. No, there was no conversation about that. It's like, wait, how can we stop his terrible abuses? But there's never, ever any talk of Republicans doing bipartisanship or begging Democrats to work with them. As soon as the Democrats get a hold of Congress, all of a sudden, oh, Republicans, how do we make you happy? I beseech you, Republicans. The most important thing is to make Republicans happy. No, you schmucks, we elected you. It wasn't to make Republicans happy. And so, guys, we know what the game is. So stop watching corporate media, which is just trash, okay? Their actual game is the Democrats agree with the corporate Republicans. They don't agree with Trump necessarily, but Mitch McConnell and Chris Coons, for example, and Joe Manchin, all those guys, they're indistinguishable from one another. Why? Their source of power is corporate campaign contributions. So who do they serve? Corporate donors that gave them those campaign contributions. This infrastructure bill proves it 100%.
I'm just, Cenk, you point out something so critical here because they celebrate bipartisanship just for the sake of bipartisanship, never looking at the results of it. Because if we look at the results of it, then we'll understand that the Democrats are complicit with this, not only in the form of Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, but also, like you said, in the form of Joe Biden. Because every time we celebrate bipartisanship, it's a win for the right wing of this country. It's a win for trickle-down economics. It's a win for the military-industrial complex. The worst things that have happened in this country in the last 20 years have been because of quote-unquote bipartisanship. And so it's a game, but it's not only a game that they use to waste our time. It's also a game that is used to the detriment of working people all around this country.
Yeah. So to that point, for those of you, and I get it, look, I was brought up on mainstream media too. And so you got to deprogram yourself and it takes a little while. And they told me Pretty Little Lies when I was growing up that all cops are always tell the truth. And that you should always trust priests, that they're the most trustworthy people in America. Seriously, I grew up in the 80s, 90s, etc. That's the kind of stuff they said, blanket statement. If you ever question religious leaders or police or the government, everybody in the media would yell at you. But if you grew up in that and you're still not sure and you think, well, the New York Times, I mean, they print all the news that's fit to print. I mean, they're the demigods. NPR whispers so pleasantly to me. Cenk, that's outrageous. They're really in on it. Let me ask you this. Why don't any reporters in DC ask about real bipartisanship? Because For the People Act is enormously popular. Getting rid of the filibuster is enormously popular. $15 minimum wage is enormously popular. And not just across the country, but in states like West Virginia. For the People Act, that is about voting rights and anti-corruption, polls at 79% in West Virginia. Yet how come none of the reporters talk about how Joe Manchin is actually against what his voters in a bipartisan way agreed to? Why do they say the only bipartisanship that counts is when corporate Democrats and corporate Republicans in Washington agree, and they agree on something that the American people in every poll tell you that they hate? Then why do they never talk about real bipartisanship? Because they're not real journalists. They're corporate media who support corporate politicians whose job is to rob us blind for their corporate donors. And And I just look, I've told you 100 times, but I'm sick of it. And I'm sick that people in DC are either stupid or blind, and they keep telling us these lies that are ruining this country and driving people into a rage. And the Democrats, they're gonna lose, and they're gonna lose to a horrible, horrible right-winger fascist. And they're gonna say, I don't know why, it was probably Bernie Sanders, it was probably the progressives. No, it's you, it's your goddamn corruption that's driving this. And no progressive in their right mind should vote for this trash of a bill, this absolute garbage that is designed for corporate donors. Who do you think, by the way, is gonna get that $579 billion? They're gonna funnel it all to giant corporations that are gonna build a couple of bridges and roads, and then they're gonna charge us a gas tax to pay for it for the rest of our lives.
Yeah, it's true. As someone who doesn't take any corporate donorship whatsoever and just is sponsored pretty much by George Soros exclusively, I can say everything you've said is accurate.
Yeah, and look, the funny thing is that they, Lance, you kid around about it, and they really believe it, man. And so I'm gonna say one super last thing. Guys, if you're a right winger and you hate George Soros controlling politics, I got good news for you. We want to get money out of politics that way, and all private financing. So those corporations that are keeping your wages low, they won't be able to contribute to any Democrats. George Soros, if we get our way, won't be able to contribute a single dollar to a single Democrat, okay? And money in politics, and the private financing. Go join Wolfpack, they're totally nonpartisan. wolf-pack.com/join. Okay, go do that. Otherwise, shut up about George Soros, because you don't mean it. If you don't end the private financing where they simply purchase our politicians at an open auction, you're totally full of crap, and you love George Soros, and you love all those campaign contributions, and you love the corruption. That's what private financing of elections is. It leads our politicians to serve private interests, not the public interest, which is all of us. That's reality. Okay, we gotta take another break. All right, when we come back, more ass kicking. We'll be right back. Back during the social break, just want to remind you a couple of things. We got a Juneteenth special on June 18th. Ben is going to host one of those hours. It's going to be great. Make sure you're checking that out. Then on membership, I know I told you, was it yesterday? I think it was yesterday, about the new thing where we're subsidizing $1.99 membership for some folks on tyt.com/change. But it's a limited number, but but you guys can add to that number. So people upgrade or they sign up at $25, $50, or $100. We add more $1.99 members because we lose money at that rate. But we want people who are on a limited budget to be able to have that access, and you guys are wonderfully generous. That way you help bring change in the world, you help bring honest reporting, and at those higher levels you subsidize other people who can't afford the minimum level membership otherwise. And those on our website, those $1.99 members actually do get the bonus episode, including the one we're gonna do today. So please check that out at tyt.com/change. And we have a new suggested price on there. And the reason for that is that's where we are sustainable as a company. So if you could do that, we love you for it. So please check that out. And speaking of savings, I told you about twostrongcoffee.com/TYT earlier. Wonderful progressive company. They give money to progressive causes, and they're having specials on Father's Day, and those specials run out on June 14th, so that's Monday. So make sure that you go check that out. Just at least go look at the bundles and see if you like them. twostrongcoffee.com/TYT. Okay. Now I'm going to go to Twitch, where folks are being incredibly generous. Depressed Progressive gave 1,000 bits. Camilla's Curse gave 1,000 bits and gifted a sub. Null Unit gave a stunning 10,000 bits. That's amazing. We love you, all of you guys, for it. Whatever you can do, and added this wonderful comment: TYT, the light in the darkness. We appreciate it, but we can't do any of that without you guys. You guys are the light in the darkness. So many others. Eldermind Pulse gifted 5 subs. Crazy Hawaiian gifted 2 subs and gave 300 bits. So many others. Sorry I can't get to all of them. Love you. Back on TYT, Cenk, Ben, and Lance with you guys. All right, Ben, take it away.
So Newsmax, journalistic integrity personified, had a panel that had an unbelievable response to the use of Allah instead of God in the Pledge of Allegiance by a student. I want us to take a look at that clip.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under Allah, indivisible, and with liberty and justice for all.
My jaw dropped.
Yeah, mine with yours.
That's an absolute disgrace. You're doing a pledge on behalf of a group of people. You're supposed to be doing it on their behalf. That's ridiculous.
It kind of makes you wonder if this is where, President Biden has just made it so easy for people to just do whatever they want and say the things that they want, irrespective of the laws and the rules. We are a Judeo-Christian nation, and our Pledge of Allegiance says one nation under God.
It's un-American, it's unpatriotic, and it's quite frankly upsetting. I served my country as a civilian in combat. I deployed to Baghdad 14 times to a combat zone, and so I saw firsthand the sacrifice and the selflessness of the men and women who wear our uniform. And we shouldn't be surprised at this, because remember, it was Joe Biden, the first president to remove God from the National Day of Prayer proclamation. So my question to President Biden and Vice President Harris is, if we can't pray to God, who do we pray to? Bernie Sanders or AOC?
That's a good point.
Now, I believe in diversity. I think the people in the school system do, but that's not the Pledge of Allegiance.
There's so much to work with here, Cenk and Lance. I'm going to say, but Lance, what do you think? What is your reaction to that?
Well, first thing I got to ask is, what do they think Allah means? Genuinely, what do they think the literal translation of it is? I'm so confused.
You said think, Lance. You said think. Yeah. That's the problem, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. No, you're right. There's a ton to unpack here. Obviously, like I'm sure everyone knows, the literal translation of Allah is God. So it's just kind of ridiculous that they would go along this. But like the thing that makes me wonder is it just that it's not their God? Is that the problem here? Because I know, like, if you see like the depiction of Jesus in other cultures, right? It's often like there's a Korean Jesus and there's a black Jesus, right? People like to, obviously, I'd say, associate themselves with their deities or whatever you want to say. So is the idea of like, this is not the Judeo-Christian God I was born with and died for my country for? Or I mean, it's kind of funny you said that too, that he'd go overseas and kill a bunch of poor people, and that's what gives him the right to say which God is right. I don't know. There's a lot going on here.
I love this story because it's a perfect toxic stew of ignorance of the right wing. So first of all, Lance is of course right. Allah just means Arabic. It just means God in Arabic. So she could have put in the French word for God, the German word for God, and they would be like, oh, I guess now that there is no God. No, there is. That it literally means God. Okay, so no. But it's Arabic and we hate the Arabs. but it's the reference to Islam and we despise Muslims. I mean, look, they're just openly bigoted. 100, you saw with your own eyes, 100% openly bigoted. And so she says, this is a Judeo-Christian country. No, it's not. It specifically says in our Constitution that we shall not establish a religion, and there shall be no religious test for office. The American Constitution is one of the most secular and clearly secular constitutions in the whole world. And so they are lying to you. And the great irony is when they say it's un-American, no. And progressives who just do defense drive me crazy. No, these folks that you just saw on Newsmax, every one of them is un-American. They're the ones who are un-American. They hate our Constitution. The Constitution says we shall not establish a religion. The founding fathers very clearly said it applies to, they used the word Mohammedan back then. It applies to the Mohammedans just as much as it does to Christians and Jews. They didn't say it was Judeo-Christian, and they very specifically said, yes, this applies to Muslims. So everybody in America is American, not based on religion, but based on citizenship. So they're absolutely liars. They hate this country. They want to live in a theocracy. And then did you catch the middle of that where she said, first of all, of course it's Biden's fault. It used to be thanks Obama, now it's thanks Biden for everything. But what was Biden's fault? She said, now under Biden, I guess they get to say whatever they want. Yeah, that's also in the Constitution. It's called freedom of speech. And you guys pretend to be in favor of it. In fact, the whole convention in 2020, the Republican convention, was freedom of speech, they're trying to do cancel culture. And then they see her, she said an Arabic word, cancel her. Now under Biden, I guess anybody's allowed to say anything. What is this, a free country? It used to be.
Go ahead. Oh, I was just going to quickly say, also make no mistake, like Tucker Carlson's really good at this. The idea of using Judeo-Christian and Western values is usually a dog whistle for things like white supremacy, right? Like Tucker Carlson has done a masterclass in being able to talk and go off about these kind of things and saying this is why Western culture is better than other cultures. But you all know what he's saying, right? Behind the scenes.
Yeah, Lance, real quick on that. I talked to a rabbi a couple of years back and he's like, I don't remember all this Judeo-Christian talk when I was growing up. Okay, that's a very recent addition. There wasn't like for hundreds of years in this country, it wasn't like, oh, our brothers the Jews. We're such a Judeo-Christian country. No, it was just Christian, right? Now all of a sudden they expanded a little bit and pretending that they like the Jews, and then they turn around and go, Soros did it. Soros is the puppet master, old anti-Semitic tropes, et cetera, et cetera. Sorry, Ben, go ahead.
No problem. So the panel went a little bit further, and I know what we saw was already bad, but this next part they really dig into how much this student needs to be punished and taught a lesson. Let's take a look at.
Part of it is because of people like President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris and the theory out there that the Constitution is a living document and all of this absolute buffoonery.
So yeah, they get some notoriety, they get some fame, but I say why not strip them of their diplomas, make them learn a hard lesson that you can't go off script.
They're not being held accountable. So as Amanda said, okay, you're graduated, whatever. So they think, oh, can you do this in the workplace? If you have to do a presentation and your boss approves it, you're just going to decide to do something different. I mean, where
you pay a price.
Right, you should pay a price.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There needs to be consequences for this. And I suggest that this young student perhaps serve a year serving in the military. And I hope that this young student does get in trouble for this, because we really need to set this record straight that this is not tolerable, not here in the United States.
Nobody steals valor more than conservatives. Isn't that guy, didn't he say he was a civilian observer? I don't know, maybe I missed it, but Cenk, they and Lance, they really are sinking their teeth into this because it really just helps their narrative. They are masters of making people afraid that something strange is going to come and replace their God and their country. But obviously, it's not a big deal. But if they could possibly make it one, they will definitely try.
Yeah, it sounds like cancel culture. It sounds exactly that's what they were trying to ask for, right? They wanted the person to be canceled. Also, kind of rich that the solution to this is conscription. He's like, I think this person should be forced to go into the military and serve and go kill poor people overseas. That'll teach them.
Yeah, no, they literally say she should be stripped. There should be consequences. How dare she go off script? These are people pretending to be in favor of free speech. I've never seen a more thorough advocacy for cancel culture than that segment that you guys just watched. And all because she said God in Arabic instead of English. Okay, so Newsmax is openly bigoted. They bring on bigoted hosts and commentators to serve their bigoted audience because they know our audience are bigots. They're filled with hate. And so let's give them more hate. And that's exactly what that was. All right, Ben, let's do the next story.
Yeah, so speaking of more hate, it seems like the monsters that the Republican Party has created in terms of QAnon, in terms of what used to be the Tea Party, but now has evolved into something entirely more monstrous. It's coming back to bite the Republican Party in the behind. I want to read a quote, and it says the following in regards to one of the governors who's facing a primary challenge because of the positive response that they gave towards COVID-19. I'm not exaggerating. When COVID hit, Ohio Republican Governor Mike DeWine sprang into action. He moved to shut down large events weeks before other governors, scrambled to delay Ohio's primary, and opted for a statewide mask mandate. All that effort to stop the spread enraged the right. After multiple moves by state legislators to reverse his decision, DeWine is now facing a potentially serious primary challenge, and this is from Vice News. So Cenk and Lance, just really simply put, the Republicans have been monetizing controversy, and now it's coming back to bite them.
Yeah, Lance, go ahead.
Yeah, I was curious. Do you know at what point this, like when this took place, how it manifested?
Not sure in terms of this, of how it manifested in this particular case, but I mean, with anything else, it seems as though they keep pushing further and further to the right, seeing who can become more extreme.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's kind of funny to me because right now, I guess Marjorie Taylor Greene is the figure who's encapsulating the whole QAnon movement and the antithesis of that. I find that Republicans have done a better job of defending her in Congress than we have. Well, not me. I'm just saying Democrats themselves of defending like Ilhan Omar. Right, Ilhan Omar will come out and say something which I didn't think in and of itself was that controversial. That both the United States has created horrific acts of terrorism, stuff like that, and the Democrats will basically all go after her. Where someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene or any of these other kind of more fringe and deeply anti-Semitic figures will get the defense that they need from the Republican Party.
Yeah. So this story is amazing because it doesn't matter how ridiculous the Republican governors were. Nothing is ever extreme enough for the right-wing base. So Mike DeWine did a half a job of protecting his citizens in Ohio from COVID. And by the way, Sherrod Brown and other Democrats from Ohio have gone out of their way to compliment Mike DeWine on that. And he's the one that did the $1 million lotteries for people who are getting vaccinated because he's trying to keep them safe, et cetera. And but he did not have the state shut down in any of the way that most of the Democrats did. He still allowed people to go to churches where they can get sick and die, et cetera, which they were like super psyched about because they're the pro-life party. But it gets way more absurd. Greg Abbott, I mean, he was one of the most renowned figures for not doing any precautions on COVID. He did about a quarter of the provisions. They're like, that's it, we hate him, tear him down, primary him, et cetera. But none of that compares to Governor Brad Little in Idaho. He did almost nothing about COVID. There was never any restrictions on going indoors. in Idaho, etc. Just a couple of times he was like, maybe you don't want to murder yourself. I don't know. Good luck, right? You're like primary him. Well, what else could he do? What else could he do? But there's nothing radical enough for Republicans. So now they're all getting primaried.
Doesn't it also kind of seem that like every single one of these Republicans who was always about like, small government and stuff like that, as soon as they had to wear masks, all of a sudden they are like anti-police. They're all saying like ACAB. All of a sudden now they're like abolish the state and stuff like that. I mean, all it took was a slight piece of thin fabric for them to kind of completely change their beliefs.
And it's like the mildest inconvenience is what they declare as an all-out war on their liberties. So yeah, it's absolutely out of control.
Yeah, by the way, in Idaho, the lieutenant governor is running against her own governor. He stepped out of the state for a second and she declared, that's it, everybody go nuts. There's no rules anymore about COVID. And none of that even made any sense. It didn't have the force of law, but she's putting out statements. It's a death cult, and ironically, they think they're pro-life. It's unbelievable. It's ignorance celebrated. All right, all the members, we got a whole other bonus episode for you guys, including making fun of Donald Trump just for fun for the members when we come back.
Old school's pitched to me from Cenk. It'll just be me, you, Jesus, Ben, and maybe Michael. And we're like, okay, cool. I can do that every week. As you can see, me, Jesus, Ben.
When you make the order, it says, don't exceed $20.01. So I'll just order literally anything to get it as close to that as I possibly can.
I'm sorry that I ordered $45 worth of food and got an email saying, sir, would you like to rethink that? What are you talking about?
I was in hell. I was just like, oh my God, the theater's empty, nobody's here. Everyone on screen keeps fucking cursing. Why did I let this happen? And the whole thing looks like it was shot through a glass of milk. My mom's gonna be so mad.
If you're looking for a heart attack, the short way, baby.
Wrong, I did put mayonnaise on it. I'm the most in shape, overweight person you'll find.
That's right.
He was like, why didn't you answer my call? I called you 39 times.
Yuck. But what makes you stop right before 40? What makes you say, nah, man, I ain't doing that no more. I'm cool.
And I called you back on the air. And I was like, okay, Kevin Smith, big shot. What the f, you said you'd come on and you didn't come on.
I'm sure I took that very well.
Yeah, you did. You called me back the next day and said, I thought it was 7 a.m. And there's now deep fake porn. I don't know if you guys have heard of this.
Heard of it? I just had some in the car.
I'll tell you who I'm not f***ing, Ben Mankiewicz.
Have you guys ever felt that?
Not ever.
And now it's just the three of us.
This is the intimate hour.
By the way, the last half hour of this, we're not even rolling.
Fair enough.
Hey, man.
Kingsley.
See, I watch movies.
I'm done with both of you.
Once Greg starts laughing, I can't stop. And I was just gonna ask you about getting high.
Snoogans, Snoochie Boochies, and members, of course, you can get the whole damn thing. TYT.com, join and free trial. I'm old school with the old folks.
Good.
John, come back.
Electric cars are awesome, but they aren't the best tool for every job. You can't park them on the edge of the sidewalk while you're running to the store for a few things. On top of that, an electric car is just financially out of reach for many people. That's where Zoom electric scooters come in. When I say electric scooter, I'm talking about small motorcycles with space in front of you to put your feet. The Zoom scooter has a range of 60 miles, offers a smooth ride up to 40 miles per hour, and can be charged from any electrical outlet. Start saving on gas while reducing your carbon footprint. To find out more, go to tyt.com/Zoom. Enter the code TYT50 to get an additional discount.
I'm Brett. I would like to refer to this segment as the Do I Still Have This Talent show. So I want to see if I can play harmonica without my hands. I don't know why I have that. Nothing's gonna be more impressive than that. I can also spin a basketball on my finger. While drinking. I'm gonna spin a basketball on my finger while drinking apple juice. You can do this, dude. It's also flat. I don't know if that helps or hurts. And it seems to be somewhat wobbly. Ta-da! Nope, I don't know how to do this one. This one's a fail. Nope. Oh God, I'm so mad.
Our community faces a never-before-seen public health and economic crisis. Businesses are calling Levin Papantonio with their legal questions regarding COVID-19. You've asked and we've answered. If you're a business owner and have suffered financial loss or closure from COVID-19 and have questions regarding your insurance policy, call us for a free consultation. Some policies may provide coverage for lost profits and earnings. Stay safe, and together we'll get through this.
We're back in the bonus episode. We're gonna do a couple stories for you guys. One's serious, one's fun. And then we'll see if we have time for chit chat. It's the bonus episode. It's all bonus anyway. All right, obviously Cenk, Ben, and Lance with you guys. Hey, everybody, make sure you're checking out Lance's show, okay? Twitch.tv/The Serfs TV. He's Lance from The Serfs. Ben, take it away.
So the early years of the Trump administration focused on hunting down and punishing leakers that provided reporters with details of Trump associates' contacts with Russia. This is according to the New York Times. And they are reporting that those efforts included forcing the Justice Department to secretly obtain personal information of Democrats on the House Intelligence Committee and their families. Prosecutors, this is a quote from the reporting, prosecutors subpoenaed Apple for data from the accounts of at least 2 Democrats on the House Intelligence Committee, aides and family members. One was a minor. The records of at least a dozen people tied to the committee were seized in 2017 and early 2018, including those of Representative Adam B. Schiff of California. Representative Eric Swalwell of California said in an interview Thursday night that he had also been notified that his data had been subpoenaed. Now, after the DOJ under Jeff Sessions failed to connect the leaks to Dems, they considered dropping it until William Barr took over a year later. Quote, William P. Barr revived languishing leak investigations after he became Attorney General a year later. He moved a trusted prosecutor from New Jersey with little relevant experience to the main Justice Department to work on the Schiff-related case and about half a dozen others, according to 3 people with knowledge of his work who did not want to be identified discussing federal investigations. Now, AG William Barr's involvement has caused some to remember this dishonest exchange with Senator Kamala Harris over his Justice Department being asked to start investigations. Let's take a look.
Attorney General Barr, has the president or anyone at the White House ever asked or suggested that you open an investigation of anyone?
I wouldn't.
Yes or no?
Could you repeat that question?
I will repeat it.
Yeah.
Has the president or anyone at the White House ever asked or suggested that you open an investigation of anyone? Yes or no, please, sir?
The president or anybody else?
Seems you would remember something like that and be able to tell us.
Yeah, but I'm trying to grapple with the word suggest. I mean, there have been discussions of matters out there that they have not asked me to open an investigation, but
perhaps they've suggested.
I don't know. I wouldn't say suggest.
Hinted.
I don't know.
Inferred. You don't know.
No, he doesn't know. The zeal in the Trump administration's efforts to hunt, this is a quote directly from the reporting, the zeal in the Trump administration's efforts to hunt leakers led to the extraordinary step of subpoenaing communications metadata from members of Congress, a nearly unheard of move outside of corruption investigations. And this is more from the reporting. Moreover, just as it did in investigating news organizations, the Justice Department secured a gag order on Apple that expired this year, according to a person familiar with the inquiry. So lawmakers did not know they were being investigated until Apple informed them last month. Lance and Cenk, there's a lot in this story, but I want to take a pause here to get your thoughts on what's being reported.
So I just want to ask the right wingers first. I just want to be clear, right? Because a lot of them are defending this. Oh, well, we had to spy in on our political opponents and we had to spy in on members of the media because earlier there were stories about how New York Times and other reporters were also spied in on by Donald Trump. Oh, okay, so does that mean we can now spy on Republican politicians and Fox News hosts? I just want to be clear because I want to be, just fair to everybody. Because if you're defending Trump on this, I assume that we can look into, well, maybe even you guys, if you're a right winger, maybe we could just now ask Apple, why don't you just give me their phone records? Because they love when the government, big government, spies in on Democrats. They love it when they spy in on reporters they don't like. So I'm just wondering. Inquiring minds want to know. That's all, Lance.
Well, I mean, I know Trump's always getting compared to Nixon for reasons like this, and not just because like he secretly hates the Jews or likes to say the N-word in private or anything like that. But I think it's more about people trying to utilize their power and exert it in times where they probably are going well beyond the bounds of what is acceptable. And I think that was the case with Trump, right? We saw time and time again, there were so many different opportunities for Trump to try and basically. Oh, sorry. I don't know what that was. But sorry, for Trump to try and utilize the tools at his disposal in order to try and either maintain or coalesce power.
Yeah, my favorite, of course, was the clip, Ben. I mean, when she's like, because look, right wingers probably don't understand anything about the law, right? So the Justice Department is supposed to be independent. It's not supposed to be political. So there are plenty of things inside the government that are political. Makes sense, and that's what we make fun of politicians when they say, "I don't want to politicize this." Of course you do. You're a politician, right? But there are some things that are supposed to be independent, because if they're not independent, we wind up being in a police state, a fascist state, an authoritarian government. Actually, the thing that right wingers are the most scared of, Tucker Carlson always telling you, "Oh, Democrats are going to make you do this. They're going to make you drink Starbucks every day. They're going to make you do all these crazy things," right? By the way, he literally said that Biden's going to make you drink Starbucks every day. Okay, so
wait, that's the thing. That's not a meme.
Yeah, I know, right? Is that amazing? Yeah, no, he literally said that. And because progressives love giant corporations, and so we're going to make you drink their coffee every day. Anyway, so in a situation like that, you have to make sure in all situations that the Justice Department is not politicized. That's the one thing that definitely should not be politicized. Otherwise, they're going to start, because they arrest people. They have the FBI under them. They have the attorney general, obviously. They have all the district attorneys, etc. If you use the force of the law against your political opponents or your media opponents, then we're no longer a democracy. So that's why when Kamala Harris asked Barr, "Did the White House ever ask you to investigate anybody?" He's like, "Well, what do you mean by words?" Because of course they did. And now we find out, yeah, they asked him, "I don't like those reporters, go investigate them. I don't like those politicians, Adam Schiff, lazy Adam Schiff, or whatever anti-Semitic thing he had for him," right? He's like, just go find out. If he's got kids, grab their phones, do whatever you want with them. By the way, the ostensible reason for this is we're so worried about leaks. The Trump administration leaked like a sieve, not just against them, but also in favor of them. By the way, this is true of Republicans and Democrats. They do positive leaks that make them look positive all the time. Those are never investigated. Never, ever, ever. It doesn't matter if they're top secret, national security, etc., right? But if anyone ever leaks against them, oh my God, I'm so concerned about national security, right? And in this case, what had gotten leaked was Trump told the Russians in the White House, "Don't worry, I'm firing James Comey. You won't have to worry about that problem anymore." Okay, by the way, fake lefters now come in and go, "Oh, Russiagate, Russiagate, I can't believe you mentioned the word Russia." Look into the story, that's what happened. And so I don't know why Trump wanted to make sure that the Russian ambassador was relieved that he wanted to get rid of our FBI director. But when people found out about that, Trump was furious and was ready to break any law to make sure that whoever told the Americans that he told the Russian ambassador that he would basically do his bidding for him inside our White House, that he would find them and punish them. Now, of course, the good news is Donald Trump and his infinite incompetence investigated all these people and still couldn't find the leaker.
They want to make you drink Starbucks every day from now until forever.
That was actually Tucker Carlson. That is not edited.
No, that really did catch me off guard, but I guess it's as ridiculous as him actually saying it, and this is the scale, the scope of. I think it's the juxtaposition that really gets me. The absurdity of what is important to conservatives versus what's not important, and it really hinges upon who's it in favor of. If it's overreach by the government and it's in favor of their political ideology, they're totally fine with it. If it's overreach and it's having to do with them not being able to pick up a gun at a drive-through at a Wendy's, then they have a problem with it. And so that's really the hypocrisy. But I think it's absolutely at this point it's baked into the system, and I think Democrats either are oblivious to it or they're complicit with it, and I'm leaning more and more and more that they're complicit with this versus just ignorance.
Yeah, I mean, I'm someone on the left who obviously is not really a fan of the institutions of either the CIA or the FBI, but I do find it kind of unique how loyalties seem to flip depending on what's happening, right? Like I remember a lot of Republicans used to despise WikiLeaks and thought they were traitors, and then all of a sudden WikiLeaks was revealing Hillary Clinton's emails, and so now WikiLeaks is a patriotic institution, stuff like that. I think the same thing applies in this case when we're talking about either the DOJ, what have you. If Trump's doing it, it was okay. Then it was completely fine, right? Because he was basically trying to weed out corruption. He was trying to drain the swamp. But if it goes in the opposite direction, then this is just a dramatic overreach of government power.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And unfortunately, once folks are into a particular camp, they can't see straight. So the facts no longer matter. So they're like, Trump good. By the way, I mean, there's another classic example. The Republicans hated Russia, and they used to accuse people on the left of, being lackeys for the Russians, even after they stopped being the Soviet Union. They were like, who cares? Who cares now that?
Or North Korea. Don't forget about that too.
Oh yeah, North Korea is an even better example. Thank you, Lance. Right? So they went from North Korea is the worst communist dictatorship, et cetera, which by the way is true. Okay, they don't do communism, but they're an awful dictatorship. And but then Trump literally said that he fell in love with Kim Jong-un, and they wrote love letters to one another. And now the right wing turned around. North Korea is the best. Communism's awesome. Is there any bigger hypocrisy than that, right? Now they're giant Russia fans and et cetera. Now, guys, the reality is, just look at the facts, right? So in the case of Russia, should you be against the Russian people? Of course not. Why would anybody be against any kinds of people, right? The question is, how's their government, right? So I always use Turkey as an example because I'm Turkish American. So like the current right-wing government of Turkey is led by Erdogan. Not a big fan, okay, because he's right-wing and I'm not. And I think he has done abuses that I'm against. That doesn't mean I hate Turks, okay? That doesn't make any sense. So in the case of Russia, you could say, hell, Vladimir Putin, a giant right-winger, authoritarian, horrible leader of Russia. That doesn't mean we should invade Russia. That doesn't mean that you need to switch your position or whatever it is. And you just have to look at the facts. Here, I'll give you one last example, FBI, right? So as Lance pointed out, historically, the FBI and CIA have not exactly been fans and friends and allies of the left, right? And certainly all across the world, the CIA did coups and so many other ways to disrupt leftist governments that were actually trying to look out for the people of their countries and keep their natural resources, et cetera. And then the FBI was awful to the civil rights movement, to any progressives. J. Edgar Hoover was a monster of monsters. FBI was one of the worst organizations in American history. But these days, the FBI is an interesting mixed bag. And so sometimes when they do thin blue line and protect police when they're not doing the right things, or law enforcement when they're not doing the right things, we criticize them. But they've actually done a pretty good job of stopping a lot of white supremacist terrorist attacks. And I give them credit for that. Why? Am I switching teams and now I love the FBI? No, credit where credit is due and discredit where discredit is due. It's not that hard. You just have to not be ideologically rigid. And in a particular camp, I don't know, I have a cult of personality, and that talk show host or that political leader told me I'm either pro-FBI or I'm anti-FBI. I'm either pro-Russia or I'm anti-Russia. And all the baggage that comes with it. No, just please, I'm begging you to use your mind.
Cenk, I used to believe, no, I still believe everything that you just said. I used to think that there was a limit to how far conservatives would go with their hypocrisy or willingness to switch sides based on how it benefits them politically. But after January 6th, and then after just different figures on the right got blacklisted or the no-fly list, it seemed like they're now really willing to turn on America itself, on democracy itself. Like they're like, we love America, but if the power structure of America is not going to benefit us, then down with democracy seems to be the next move of some conservatives. I was wondering what you thought about that.
Well, Ben, real quick on that, that's an interesting one where I think they have been relatively consistent, but with a mirage of marketing. Okay, so let me explain what I mean. I think conservatives in this country never believed in democracy. They wore the flag and they carried the Bible and they did all the trappings and the marketing of being patriotic. But they always preferred to have their power rather than equality and justice. So in the South, they said, oh, we love democracy, but not for black people. America's for equality, but not for black people. We're gonna keep them as slaves, right? Well, then you're obviously not for equality. Period. That's the most obvious thing in the world. You're obviously not for justice. You're obviously not for the things that America theoretically stands for. And then they were so adamant about that they declared war on America because they said we would rather have our power than America. Fact, there's no disputing it, right? And then during the Jim Crow era, for 100 years, they said, we don't care what the federal laws are. We don't care what America wants. Down here in Mississippi, we're gonna do what we want. We're gonna break the federal law all the time and screw America and screw justice and equality. We're gonna keep black people down. We're not gonna let them vote. We're gonna do poll tax. We're gonna do lynchings. But what is lynchings? What is cross burning? It's terrorism. It's to terrorize the population. Talked about this on a recent show. In the Tulsa massacre, there's still folks alive today who lost family members, and they still don't want to talk about it because they were so terrorized that if they ever mentioned it out loud, that they too would be lynched, right? So did those folks for that extra 100 years after the Civil War, did they believe in equality and justice in the American way? No, they despised it. So now when I see them arguing for, yes, that Trump should abuse his power, screw democracy, if he didn't win, let's storm the Capitol and take it by violence. That actually is the conservative tradition in America.
I don't think you even have to look that far back in the past though. Like just look at modern day voter registration laws and the ones that are trying to be passed, right? Like those disproportionately target Black Americans, Indigenous Americans. I mean, like my mother's Indigenous in Canada, and like we can't fathom how your system works where people have to wait in line for like 9 hours to vote. That is absurd to me. It takes me less than 5 minutes, and it always has in elections, right? Whereas I hear these stories of people in America, they have to line up all day, and like now they're not allowed to be given food. They're not allowed to be given water because that's considered to be somehow infringing on democracy, where it's disproportionately affecting people who are marginalized.
And they have no shame about it.
Yeah.
And Ben's right, no shame. They're trying to take away people's voting rights right now, today, while pretending to be in favor of democracy.
Yeah.
One more story here, Cenk. Now that twice impeached former President Donald Trump is banned from big social media platforms, his days are filled with engagement parties, club gatherings, and even the occasional memorial service. The only issue is that these events are hosted by complete strangers, and Donald Trump has just turned into the newest cast member of Wedding Crashers. Now, if you really think about it though, it makes perfect sense that Donald Trump is now struggling to find things to do to fill up his days since he can no longer tweet inaccurate information every 5 minutes. Here's a quote from the reporting. They said the following, quote, "He'll show up to anything. In recent weeks, Trump has popped into engagement parties and memorial services. A Mar-a-Lago member who recently attended a club gathering for a deceased friend was surprised when Trump sauntered in to deliver remarks and then hung around, apparently enjoying himself." I guess without the social media attention, Trump is clearly struggling. Here's another quote from the reporting, quote, "Giving meandering speeches about how the 2020 presidential election was, quote, stolen from you at a stranger's reception is one thing, but stealing the limelight from someone who just died because you need the extra attention is just bleak, even for Trump." Lance and Jake, what do you guys think about this?
I think one of the funniest parts of the story is how Donald Trump, after he got kicked off all social media, decided that he was going to create his own platform. And all he ended up doing was developing a blog, the purpose of which was so that the tweets that he made in that blog would then be able to be put on Twitter accounts. But Twitter caught onto it right away, blocked him, and then he just gave up. He was like, yeah, I'm done with this. No one's listening to me anyway. We're shutting this whole thing down.
Yeah, Ben mentioned Wedding Crashers because he's gone to so many weddings, right, at Mar-a-Lago. And he grabs the mic and he's like, okay, now let me tell you about an election that was stolen. Why are we talking about that at some person's wedding, right? And so, but now he's basically going to memorial services. So now we got a new movie reference. He's attending 4 weddings and a funeral, right? Now, if it wasn't awkward enough that you're making that speech at a wedding, but can you imagine like, oh, Uncle Bob died and he was such a great guy, although they're at Mar-a-Lago. Anyway, but let's pretend Uncle Bob was a great guy. And Uncle Bob was such a great guy. You remember him? Trump's like, give me the mic. I don't remember Uncle Bob at all. Don't know him, but I'll tell you what, election was stolen from me, like life was stolen from Bob. If Bob was here, he would have voted for me. But all the illegals voted for Hillary. I mean Biden, and obviously Hunter Biden and Hugo Chavez stole this election for me. And I bet Hugo and Bob are talking now. Bob, go get him. Go get Hugo Chavez. He stole this election from me. Obviously pathetic.
Like I just this last quote from Jessica Toomer at Up Rocks is the best one out of everything. They said the following: "This is a guy who had a Diet Coke panic button installed in the Oval Office and once suggested people inject bleach into their veins to combat COVID-19. So really, should we be that surprised that he's morphed into the real life version of Chaz from Wedding Crashers?" There you have it.
Wait, hold up. What's the Diet Coke button? That one's news to me.
I think she's probably just exaggerating there.
No, she's not exaggerating. So he's obsessed with Diet Coke, and so yeah, and so he would like drink like I forget the exact number, but like 6 in a sitting. No one cares. Who cares? You drink 6, you drink 12. Who cares, right?
Sure.
But like it was such a priority for him that he was obsessed with making sure that he can get his Diet Coke on time. So he changed procedures. I don't remember exactly if there was a button, but I think there might have been a literal button. Okay, yeah, there was, right, Edwin? Yeah, there was a literal button for the Diet Coke. Okay.
I was like, wait. I was like, no, this is too ridiculous. That has to be an exaggeration.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
No, but
my goodness.
I play this game with my kids. What was the Donald Trump? What was the statement Donald Trump didn't make? And they love it. They think it's hilarious. Okay, so you take out the coal and you clean it. That's clean coal. Okay. Yeah, he actually said that, right? The stealth fighter, no one can see it. It's invisible. No. They can't pick it up on radar. You can see it. It's right there. It's actually, he said it several times. I think one of the times the stealth fighter was right behind him and we could all see it. Okay, so there is no end to how stupid Donald Trump is. And guys, just think about it, right? If you wanted to push something that you were involved in, where's the very last thing you would push your agenda for whatever you're doing, right? At a funeral.
Wedding or a funeral.
Right, at a funeral. But he has no boundaries.
One of those two. One of those two. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you were to ask me.
Yeah. I mean, the weddings again was like ridiculous, but like funerals, it's unreal. So, but look, guys, there's two kinds of Trump stories. There's the ones that are really still important, unfortunately, where he agitates for getting rid of democracy. He has this insane idea about how he's going to be reinstated in August, and then
30% of Republicans believe that.
Yeah, that's right, Lance,
as well.
Yeah. Oh, a third, like at 29%. So about a third of Republicans go, oh yeah, no, he's coming back in August. Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, right? And then
really
Larry
crazy.
Trump goes on Fox News and goes, I don't know where they got that from. Of course, that's not true. And then Trump released a video 2 days later, and he's like, I'll be back in office sooner than you think. Wait, did you bother to do, like, all your guys said, oh, that's fake news, it's not true, we don't know anything about reinstatement. Then you do a video, you say, I'll be in office sooner than you think. Well, I mean, and 40% of this country is like, that's my leader.
That's our guy.
That's my guy. That's the saddest thing in the world. But anyway,
the Diet Coke button guy.
Yeah, the Diet Coke button guy. So look, guys, there's those stories are still serious and unfortunately still relevant. By the way, another category of serious stories is when he tells Republicans what to do, and they say, yes, sir, I'll do it, sir. Even Mitch McConnell now bowing to Donald Trump. Those stories are relevant and really sad. This one's just fun. It doesn't really matter what he does at weddings and funerals, but it's a hoot that this guy's still walking around like to anyone that'll see. One last thing about this story because it's so funny. So he has this one guy, I forget his name, that organizes like fans of his. So whenever he leaves Mar-a-Lago, he hurries up and organizes them, and they're there going, yeah, Donald Trump, and he's like, oh, that's so good, that's so good, and he knows it too. He invited the guy inside to Mar-a-Lago. He's like, you're doing a good job. If somebody was like, hey, Cenk, I'll organize fake, not fake, because I'm sure they like Donald Trump, but I'll organize people to come and like applaud you wherever you go. I'm like, oh, please don't. That's so awkward and weird, right?
Yeah.
And Trump's like, oh, you will? In a totally inorganic way that's obviously drummed up to soothe my ego? Yes, I press a button for that.
My button is bigger than yours and my button works. My button is bigger than yours and my button works.
You guys are pretty quick on the draw with those drops, man. I love that. I love it. That's amazing.
Yeah, who's ever on the soundboard?
That's Bart.
You're earning your pay.
I was gonna say, I think I'm gonna go just park outside of Mar-a-Lago. I'm sure Donald Trump is so desperate for some attention that we can get some pretty good exclusives from the left, like just because he would love to be interviewed. So.
Ben, that's not that bad an idea, man. Just tell him you're having a funeral. He'll show up.
Somebody do.
Yeah. Just gotta bring some Diet Coke. He'll be there.
Diet Coke here. So ooh, me likey.
My button is bigger than yours and my button works.
All right, we are out of time. All right, Lance from the Serfs. Everybody check it out. Benjamin Dixon show. Everybody check it out. And speaking of checking it out, Common Rooms tonight on Twitch. Okay, so 9 o'clock Eastern. So in about half an hour, twitch.tv/TYT. And let me just give the URL one more time for Lance's channel. It's twitch.tv/TheSerfsTV. Okay. All right, Lance and Ben, thank you. Have a great weekend.
Thanks. Take care.
Thank you so much.
My button is bigger than yours and my button works.
They want to make you drink Starbucks every day from now until forever.